What if searching for their son meant losing each other? Part 3. Good morning, sleepyhead. Bella laughed, as I stumbled into the kitchen. I noticed she was already eating breakfast and going through mail that had piled up. When I reached her, I leaned down and gave her a kiss on the cheek. My body involuntarily yawned seconds after I straightened myself. Nathan's party, for a lack of a better description, was utterly exhausting. Rosalie, Emmett, Alice, and Jasper didn't leave until closer to midnight, and Bella and I foolishly stayed up and talked until 2 a.m. My plan to sleep in was shot when it hit 8 o'clock, and I couldn't force my body to go back to sleep any longer, but I also couldn't fully wake up, either. I felt hungover but without the alcohol. My body was achy from all the running around, and my chest stung this morning in the shower from the grass burn. Nathan's party was definitely worth it, but we would not be hosting another one that big for a long while. "This is for you," Bella called out. She held an envelope in the air with her hand while staying focused on whatever else she was reading. I took it from her hand and opened the folded flap without checking the return address. As I opened up the page, I realized the letter heading was from a hospital in Denver. I was momentarily confused until I read the words typed out. It was a job offer. I tilted my head and started to rattle off why they would be sending me this when I hadn't contacted anyone looking for a new job. "Edward?" Bella waved her hand in front of me. "Edward, are you okay? What is it?" She looked heavily concerned, as I was sure she could read the confusion on my face. It's a job offer, but I didn't put my resume out," I answered as my body fully began to wake up. "Do you think someone referred you?" she asked innocently, but I shook my head. That wasn't how that would have worked. At the very least, I would have gotten a phone call. Not just a letter that read more like an acceptance letter than it did an offer. The position was exactly what I did in Forks, just for more money, and at a more well-known hospital. The same hospital I was looking at when I decided to move to Forks. However, I made the decision then to move with Bella and not pursue their offer. I wasn't sure who would have had a hand in this, but I knew I didn't want it. "Are you going to take it?" Bella asked curiously, and I answered with another shake of my head. Honestly, I was more stumped than intrigued. I wasn't sure why it had showed up now, but I wasn't interested in the hospital environment anymore. I wanted my own practice, with my own hours, and the ability to be with my family when I wanted to be, not all-nighters and 2 a.m. wake-up calls. "Well, you know I'd support you if this was something you wanted, right?" Bella's words spoke one meaning, but her eyes gave her away. She didn't want me to take this, and after a decade of letting her down. I wasn't going back on my word now. "No way," I spoke confidently this time and wrapped my arms around her waist. I threw the letter on the table behind her and had no plans to think about it again. "That isn't what I want anymore. You and Nathan are what I want." I leaned down and gave her a kiss on her lips. "So, what now?" Bella pulled back and cocked her eyebrow at me. "Yup, you're the most beautiful, of them all. But seriously, I don't want to go back to a hospital, and I doubt you'd like Denver, anyway." I leaned back down to kiss her, and this time Bella held it against my body as she surrendered her mouth to me. Of course, as always, as soon as it began it ended when the sound of a door opening echoed into the kitchen. "We need to tell him," I stated, and Bella nodded back at me. "Today," she stated. It wasn't a question, it was a declaration. I smiled at her as our sleepy-eyed Nathan stumbled into the room just like I had a short while prior. "Mornin'," he mumbled as he grabbed a bowl and poured himself some cereal. Bella offered to help him but was quickly turned down as Nathan told her he was fine. I went behind him to fix myself something to eat, and we all sat at the table together. Bella would eye me when Nathan wasn't looking, and I knew we were both nervous to tell him, but at the same time excited, too. I couldn't wait to hold her and kiss her without having to look over my shoulder all the time. "Nathan," Bella called out as we walked to where Nathan was seated on the couch. He had been as exhausted as I was, and for the most part, vegged out in front of the TV. Bella and I wouldn't normally allow that type of behavior, but we figured, with it being summer break, he could have a free pass for the day. It also gave us a little alone time to talk about our plan for telling him. "Yeah," he answered, turning his head to acknowledge us. Bella and I talked about several scenarios for explaining our new status to him, but we opted to keep it quiet and personal. I offered to drive us out to Port Angeles for dinner, but Bella was concerned that it would be too stressful. She suggested we just tell him at home. Which was exactly what we were about to do. "We'd like to talk to you," I started. Bella and I came to sit down next to him, and I grabbed the remote and turned off the TV. "Is this good or bad news?" he asked cautiously, and I was surprised, yet elated. He hadn't jumped to the, "you're moving out" statement he tended to say. "Bella, if we just walk in, he's going to think I'm moving out again," I rebutted when she told me we should just walk in and tell him. "Well, we'll tell him like we did before, you're not moving out. And I think it would be best to tell him about the moving now, too. I know we haven't had a chance to sit down and talk about where, but he needs to know it's coming, and he'll need to prepare." Bella quickly threw more facts back at me. "Oh, you think it's best to tell him we're moving and not be able to tell him where?" I questioned, and she looked thoughtful for a second. "What if we let him help us? Like, we can choose our top places and let him look at them. If there is one area that works better than the other, we can always push towards that, yes?" she proposed. "Well, we could go over the schools, activities to do, and all the fun stuff with him. He'll definitely feel more helpful, and probably appreciate having a voice." "Yeah, we'll go with that plan." I nodded thoughtfully before leaning over and kissing her forehead. "That's why I like you, you're the smart one." Bella swatted my arm and playfully called me a jerk. I quickly wrapped my arms around her and swung her into my arms, kissing her until she was breathless. "So, am I still a jerk?" I asked with my eyebrow cocked. "Nope, but we should go talk to Nathan now so we can come back and talk." The way she articulated the word, talk, immediately made the hairs on my neck stand up as she playfully winked at me and grabbed my hand. "Let's go do that," I answered slowly as we turned in the direction of the living room, where we walked in hand. "Well, we think it's good news. And we hope you do, too," Bella said reassuringly with a bright smile on her face. "Okay." Nathan drew out the word and looked back and forth between the two of us. "Nathan, how you've noticed things have been different between your mom and me. And, well, I don't know how much you've assumed so far, but we want you to know that we're together now officially," I pushed out uncomfortably. Trying to explain to your 8-year-old son you were now dating his mother was slightly harder than I had expected it to be. "So, you're, like, dating?" he questioned, and I could see the emotions swirling in his eyes were a mix of confusion and excitement. "Yes, Nathan, we're dating," Bella answered for us. "Cool, so do you love each other now?" Nathan asked without missing a beat, and I froze. Crap, what to say to that? "Nathan, we've always loved each other. Now, it's just a different kind of love," Bella answered without a second thought, and my head snapped to her. She looked up at me, and I could see she meant every word she had just said. I smiled in her direction but tried to keep it discreet. The first time I pronounced my love to Bella would not be in front of Nathan. I wanted that moment to be perfect. Nathan glanced down for a second and then back up at us with a smile on his face. "So, we're like a real family?" I started to laugh at him and he joined in. I could tell he was still tired, but he didn't look upset or even angry that I was now dating his mom. Instead he looked almost relieved, but happy, definitely happy. "Of course, we're a real family," I assured him. His face was lit up like a Christmas tree, and it made my heart melt. I knew this was what he wanted, and I was elated that he was happy it finally happened. "Mom," Nathan spoke and turned to Bella. "Are you happy now?" Bella froze for a second, and even I sat straighter at such a direct question from our 8-year-old. "Yes, baby, I'm very happy," she answered with a glowing smile. "Dad?" He shifted his attention to me. "I am beyond happy. There aren't words to describe how over the moon I am." I exaggerated my words so he knew how I felt. "Good, so are you going to get married?" He fired off at us, and my eyes widened for a second. Damn, this boy got to the point and fast. "It's not out of the question, but we'll discuss it with you if we do. However, there is something else we'd like to talk to you about." Bella edged, and I knew this was the make or break part. I had assumed Nathan would take the idea of us dating pretty easily, since I knew he already assumed we were. But now we were throwing moving at him, and that, well, I wasn't so sure about. "Nathan, your father and I have been talking, and we want to know what you think about moving," Bella asked calmly. Nathan's face went blank, and he didn't answer immediately. Instead, he tilted his head to the side and looked at her. He crinkled his lips to the side and we knew he was considering her words. "Why would we move?" he eventually asked. "Well, I'd like to start my own practice so that I can go back to being a doctor, but with more normal hours so I can still be home at night." Your mom and I have agreed it would be better to do that somewhere else besides Forks, I explained in 8-year-old terms. What about Papa? Nathan pushed. Baby, he's not going anywhere. We can always come back and visit as much as you like. And we'll also visit your Aunt Alice and Uncle Emmett, too. Bella reassured him that we would never deprive him from his family. It also reminded me that we needed to tell Ethan that his uncle and aunt were also moving, which was announced after he went to sleep. Won't I have to make new friends? He asked, genuinely concerned, and I started to worry that we'd put too much on him too soon. Yeah, unfortunately, that's the sad part of moving, but you'll still come back to visit. And you'll make new friends and see new places. Bella put enthusiasm behind her voice. Oh, make the idea of moving sound more appealing. We can also redecorate your new room, and we'll find fun new activities for you to do. We'll also make sure you can still play baseball. Well, that doesn't sound so bad, Nathan replied. But he definitely wasn't excited yet. Where are we going? That we haven't decided on yet, and we were hoping you could help. Your mom and I are going to make a list, and with your help. We thought we could decide as a family. I butted in and explained our plan. I get to choose? He asked, shocked. Of course you have a say. You're part of this family, too, Nathan, I replied. And he nodded his head. He yawned, and I knew we'd taken up his span of attention for now. You just think about it, and if you have any questions just ask, okay? Bella told him, before we both got up to give him some space. He needed to think, and I was confident he would find us if he needed to. Blank. When Bella and I went back to check on Nathan 5 minutes after our talk, we found him passed out on the couch. After we covered him up with a blanket and shut the TV back off, we headed into the office to begin talking about possible places to relocate. Now that school was out, it would be the best plan to start looking, and hopefully move, before the next school year. If Nathan started another year in Forks, I wasn't sure if we'd pull him out, and truthfully, I wanted out of this town as soon as possible. The letter from Denver continued to plague my thoughts, even though I knew there wasn't a chance in hell I'd take it. Though it was a generous offer, it just didn't fall in line with the direction my future was heading, and after some thought I had a good idea who was behind it. Before I could continue wasting time worrying about Denver, Bella caught my attention when she picked up some of the papers I put together. So, do you have a top 5? I mean, I can work from anywhere, but I'd like to be near a major city for agency reasons. Bella started to explain, but I had already thought of that. In fact, I really did have a top 5, but I wanted to give her a chance to consider all of her options first, so instead of listing them off, I had her tell me places where she'd always wanted to go instead. Well, Oregon would be close to home, but wouldn't it be too close? Bella asked while biting the pen cap currently sitting between her lips. It's up to you. Portland is a nicer city with a lot of nicer suburbs. The school system is solid. No sales tax is a plus, but property tax is considerably higher, and we'd be within driving distance of your dad, I pointed out. And yours. Plus, isn't Esme still in Port Angeles? Bella's face paled as she spoke the name Esme. True, she is. So Oregon is out, California? I looked over her, and she gave me a small smile. She was right, closer to her dad was not such a bad thing. But my parents, no thank you. I don't really see us living in California. What's next? Bella quickly dismissed, and that is how the majority of our time went. Bella quickly said no to anywhere considered the Pacific Northwest, and anything even remotely close to the Pacific Northwest, stating it was simply too close to my family. She also vetoed anything that was considered the deeper South because she said it wouldn't be fair to be close to Alice but not to Emmett, which then took out the New England states. I was starting to get frustrated, but I did my best not to show it because I want Bella to feel confident wherever we moved next. However, I was starting to think we'd wind up in Europe with the way she was checking states off. Well, I was looking at Missouri. I started to move further down the list, but she quickly cut me off. Missouri, Edward? What the heck is even in Missouri? Bella looked at me bewildered. The major cities are St. Louis, Kansas City, and Springfield. There is a lot of history, outdoor activities, and a lot to do with Nathan. Route 6 travels through there and you're not buying it, huh? I paused. Edward, please tell me the next one is better? She pleaded. Her face held so much concern it was downright adorable. North Carolina? I asked cautiously. North Carolina, she repeated with a perplexed look on her face. That doesn't sound so bad. After sitting in the cramped chair for the better part of an hour, I decided to tanned and stretch my muscles before talking about yet another state. Bella had already moved from her chair to the edge of the desk, so I opted to stand behind her, and I wrapped my arms around her stomach. Well, I spoke into her ear. North Carolina has Raleigh and Charlotte. Some areas have decent school systems, there is a lot of outdoor activities, but it's close enough to travel north or south to get to major vacation spots. They are in no short supply of suburban houses or secluded cabins in the woods. I kissed the back of her neck. And there are about 4 places total that would be decent for me to start an office. Private practices are starting to become more used in the bigger cities and would give me enough people to bring in, or we could move to a more remote area where the doctors aren't as plentiful. A cabin in the woods, huh? Bella asked, and I realized she stopped listening to me after I said that. Perhaps, or we could get a house. We'd need to talk to Nathan before we bought a cabin, I stated. And she nodded thoughtfully. North Carolina doesn't sound so bad, and it's not too far from your brother and sister, but we have to get Nathan on our side, she reminded. I think we can do that, I said as she turned in my arms so she was now facing me. He's been asleep for a while, Bella noted, and I nodded. Well, he was tired, and more than likely, he'll be asleep for a while longer. Do you want to talk about more places? I winked playfully before connecting my lips to hers and putting my hands on her waist. As they slowly moving them up her shirt, I looked her in the eyes to silently ask for permission. You can touch, she whispered into my mouth. I moved my hands up to take her top off and unclasped her bra. My mouth greedily sought out her breasts, and I used my tongue and mouth to tease her nipples. Even though Bella and I weren't ready for sex, it was becoming incredibly frustrating to be around her. Just watching her swing her hips a little more than normal was erotic. But seeing her practically laid out on my desk was enough to cause a frenzy. Our intimate times were becoming more frequent, and though it was hard to keep my head straight, I knew Bella would tell me when she was ready for more, because Lord knew I was ready whenever she was. As my mouth stayed connected with her breasts, I used my free hands to work down her pants. In a quick fluid motion they were off, followed by her panties. Her legs spread open, and I quickly moved to begin working her clit with my tongue. Her hips bucked in sync with my mouth, and within minutes I heard her moans and felt her shake as her orgasm overtook her. I pulled away and started to help find her clothes when her eyes turned lustful. Before I could blink, Bella was on her knees and working the belt to my pants. Bella, you don't, I tried to articulate, but she quickly told me to shut up. We never went back to talking about moving for the rest of the night. Blank. Nathan, are you ready? Bella yelled up the stairs, and I could see she was stressed out. Bella, I walked up to her and wrapped my arms around her. Calm down, baby, it's just your dad. I know, but I'm still worried. We're telling him we're moving, and I'm scared, she whispered the last word. I looked deep into her eyes, and I could see her trepidation. She was worried that he would think we were abandoning him, which was not at all what we were doing. Bella and I knew that if we wanted a chance to move on, truly move on and grow stronger as a couple and as a family, it was time to leave Forks. Getting Nathan on board for North Carolina was the easy part. As soon as I told him about all of the hiking, fishing, sports teams, and how close a theme park was, he was ready to start packing. I told him we'd see Drive Banner one more time to tell him goodbye, but that we were sure he wouldn't need to see anyone else once we had moved. Jimmy was probably not gone forever, and it would be something we would always have to look for, but at this point, as each day passed, we grew closer to the 1-year mark of his personality shifting. We were also closer to the 1-year anniversary of his kidnapping, and Bella and I decided not to focus on that for now. Life had changed so much that it made me dizzy just thinking about it. I'm coming, Nathan sang as he ran down the stairs. He had dressed himself in a yellow plaid shirt with a pair of jeans, and his hair slicked back. I cocked an eyebrow at him, but he shrugged me off. Soon he'd be asking me how to shave. God, where had the time gone? Another topic that Bella and I hadn't elaborated much on since our first date was more children. We both knew we wanted them, but I wasn't sure what timeline Bella had. And it was something I wanted to consider after we moved and got settled in. Neither of us were getting any younger, and even though Bella wasn't old enough to be considered high risk, it wasn't that far away. Of course, it would probably help if I could tell her I loved her. In the last week, I had tried, but every time I came close it just wasn't the right moment. I hoped, after talking to Charlie, that whatever nerves I was holding onto would fade away. 30 minutes later we were pulling into Charlie's driveway, even though Bella had told him we were coming over for dinner. It actually meant Bella had made a casserole and was going to use Charlie's oven to heat it up. I wasn't sure why he didn't just come to our house, but apparently, they had always done dinner that way. "Come on in," Charlie ushered. "Dad, I'm just going to start in the kitchen," Bella announced before she quickly took off. Charlie nodded as we moved into the living room. Of course, the sports channel was blaring. "How have you been?" I asked casually. "Good, good," he answered. "What this?" Nathan asked as he motioned towards a box. That was when I realized a lot of Charlie's shelves were bare. He didn't strike me as a man who would redecorate, and the paper sitting on the box looked like wrapping paper you'd use when you were moving. "Oh, well, Charlie stumbled through his words. "He's redecorating, Nathan. The box is so he can move stuff around without breaking anything." I lied easily, or so I thought. "Dad?" Nathan looked me dead in the eye. "You suck at lying." What your dad meant was, "Well, your papa is having someone move in, so I was making room," Charlie muttered. My eyes widened as they snapped towards him. "Moving in with Charlie?" "Oh," Nathan replied. "Who's moving in?" "Her name is Karen, and she's a really nice lady. I'm hoping you can meet her soon," Charlie answered. "Who the fuck is Karen?" "Bella is going to freak." "Oh cool, does she like to fish?" Nathan asked curiously. "No, she hates fishing, but she likes to cook the fish," Charlie laughed. "She sounds cool to me." Nathan shrugged his shoulders and focused his attention on the TV. "Karen?" I asked quietly. "After we eat," Charlie answered, and I nodded. I wasn't sure how Bella was going to feel about this, but the more I thought about it, the more I considered that this could be good news. Bella wouldn't feel like she was leaving Charlie alone, and that worked in my favor. Well, worked in our favor. Dinner went on as normal, and we all enjoyed Bella's lasagna and garlic bread. Nathan curled up in the living room to watch a repeat of an old baseball game, as Charlie, Bella, and I stayed around the dining room table. "So, I have some, news," Charlie started uncomfortable. And I moved my hand to Bella's. Charlie's eyes focused on our hands but quickly jerked his head up. "Sorry, it's weird seeing you two so together," he amended. "You have news?" Bella pushed, anxiously. Yeah, so I have been dating someone. Her name is Karen, she works at the diner, and she's moving in." Charlie rushed out so quickly I almost didn't catch it all. Bella's hand grip ped mine for a second before marginally relaxing. "Karen," Bella repeated, and it sounded like she was practicing saying the name. "Yes, Bella, I wanted to tell you sooner, but," Charlie tried to explain, but she put her hand in the air. "I'm not mad, just surprised," she said evenly, but I knew that tone. I started to rub my thumb over her knuckle to ease her stress. "I'd like you to meet her," Charlie offered, and I nodded my head. "How long?" Bella asked next. "A few months," Charlie answered, and her face clouded. "You think that's wise after a few months?" Bella asked in disbelief. "I do," he answered solemnly, and I knew Charlie saw he was losing. "Okay, then," Bella stated before changing to our own news. "I guess we should tell you of our news, we're moving." Bella talked so quickly, she didn't even give Charlie a chance to prepare. Yup, she was definitely mad. "What do you mean you're moving?" Charlie snapped. His face went rigid and his shoulders tensed. The dynamic of our conversation immediately changed. "Dad, I know this may be upsetting, but we need to do this," Bella pleaded with him to understand. If either one of us could see rebuilding our lives here in Forks, we did in a heartbeat. But the truth was we needed a clean start. "Did I do this?" Charlie muttered under his breath. His eyes looked lost as he stared at Bella, and for the first time ever, I felt bad for him. "What? No, this isn't about you. This is about us," Bella explained. "I, personally, don't want to be near Esme, or even Carlisle, and I'm sick of avoiding areas of town because it reminds me of what happened to Nathan. Edward can't start a practice here, but he can't go back to the hospital, either. Dad, we need this, and you have someone now, so you won't be alone." "But, Bella, just because I'm with someone doesn't mean I've replaced you," he answered. "I'd certainly hope not," Bella shot back. "However, that doesn't change the fact that we're moving. We'll still visit, and visit often. And you're welcome at our house whenever you want, but I can't live here anymore." "Charlie, I know this may be shocking, but you know as well as I do there isn't anywhere local for me to work," aside from the hospital. And as long as my dad is in charge there, well, it wouldn't be the best for us, I butted in. Bella fiercely defended our decision to move but also left me little room to speak up. I knew she wanted to move just as much as I did, but this was the first time I'd heard her speak about it so acidly, like Forks was a disease she wanted cured of. I understand, Charlie finally sighed. It's hard seeing that you're grown up now. Dad, I've been a grown up for a while now. Bella's voice actually sounded sincere. I actually snorted, and Charlie shot me a glare. Just wait until Nathan makes you a grandpa. He rebutted. I've got at least 20 more years before I have to worry about that. I blew off. Yeah, I said that, too. He narrowed his eyes, and I shut up real fast. Charlie laughed at me before he turned his attention back to Bella. You'll always be my little girl. He nodded his head like he was agreeing with himself. So, where are you moving? Does Nathan know? Yeah, I coughed to clear my throat. Nathan helped us decide, and we're moving to North Carolina. The other side of the country, Bella? Charlie stared at Bella, but all she did in return was nod her head. Edward, if you don't mind, I'd really like a chance to talk to my daughter alone, Charlie asked in a tone that told me there was no room for debate. Instead, I turned to Bella and asked if that was what she wanted. I'll be okay, she assured me out loud, and I stood up. I didn't leave the room before I leaned down and kissed her cheek and whispered in her ear my vow to stand next to her if I was needed. She nodded at me with a small smile before turning back towards her dad. Who's winning? I asked Nathan as I walked into the living room. We are, he answered without losing focus of the game. Mom didn't take it well, did she? Not exactly, I replied warily. Was he really 8? More like 28. Bet you're glad I wanted you two to be together, huh? I looked over at him to see him smirking. Don't worry, Dad, I liked you. He turned his head back to the game, and the only thing I could do was laugh. I love you too, kid. Bella and Charlie managed to stay sequestered in the kitchen for about 20 minutes before a teary-eyed Bella came to find me. She put on a smile for Nathan, but I knew better than to assume their talk was anything but easy. We managed to get home fairly quickly, and Nathan was put to bed shortly thereafter. Bella didn't even bother changing clothes before settling onto my lap as we sat on the couch. At first she didn't speak, but instead she just played with my shirt. She would trace her fingertips over my chest, then pick at the cotton, and I knew this was her way of distracting herself. Though I remained patient and didn't push, it was impossible to keep hidden my body's natural reaction to her. I knew she felt it, but I did my best to push away my overwhelming feelings of desire. First, because the first time I made love to Bella, Nathan would not be in the house, but also because Bella needed my patience, not my penis. Karen may be nice, Bella eventually spoke. I mean, I've met her well, at the diner anyways, and she was nice. A little too nice, but nice. My dad deserves someone nice, and… Bella, I interrupted, I think you've said the word nice like 5 times now. Oh right, she quickly apologized. It's not that I don't want him to be happy. I just think they're moving a little too fast. I mean, they've only been dating for a few months, and they're already moving in together. The same could be said about us, you know, I pointed out, and she nodded. Oh, I know, my dad said that too, and he was so convinced you were forcing me to move. I tried to explain to him that I wasn't being forced, but I'm not sure he believed me. It's just, for the first time, I see, like really see, myself being happy, and I want to be happy. I wasn't unhappy before, but I wasn't happy not happy like this. She looked up at me, and I could see she was frazzled. Despite Bella's strength, she had finally hit her break. You're doing it again, I whispered, and I watched her shoulders visibly drop. She's young, this Karen, I remember. Well, she's older than me, but what if she got pregnant? I can't see my dad raising another child, and I'm just so scared she's going to break his heart, Bella explained. I know, I soothed with my voice as my hand rubbed circles on her back. But Charlie is a grown man, and we have to let him make his own decisions. Just like he's backed off about us. Peef, Bella scoffed. He was so convinced you were making me move he offered me my old room back. Well, he's coming around. A few months ago, he would have locked you in your old room and thrown away the key, I joked. And Bella finally smiled. It was a small tight smile, but I saw it, and I took full advantage. So, instead of continuing our circular conversation that was leading us nowhere, I started to kiss her. When she immediately responded back to me, I put one hand behind her head and leaned her back. Our bodies stayed intertwined together for about an hour before we separated. All of the drama surrounding dinner had been put out of our minds for the night. Blank, underscore, blank. The next 2 weeks were busy while Bella and I sorted through emails and returned phone calls as we prepared our move to North Carolina. We were currently looking at areas outside of Raleigh, and with that in mind, I was busy looking at potential properties to build an office. I knew I didn't want to be part of a strip mall or an already built office building. I wanted the ability to expand the building and have it acceptable to both cars and public transportation. The more I looked, the more I realized that getting exactly what I wanted was going to be difficult, and no amount of pre-planned research had really helped. Bella and I had sat down to look at potential areas to move to, and so far, the town of Apex was winning the race. We both desired the suburban feel that was far enough away from the city to not feel suffocated by it, but close enough that I could easily commute. However, that didn't mean Bella was going easy on me over money. The one aspect we continued to argue over was whether we should focus solely on moving into a gated community or not. Personally, I favored them because I felt they were safer, and given the situation with my parents, nothing was too cautious in my eyes. Bella, on the other hand, felt they were too expensive. Despite physically showing her the amount of money I had on hand, plus my assets, she still didn't understand why I wanted to spend $400,000 on a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home, with a large yard, in-ground pool, and a privacy fence. No matter how many times I explained that I wanted a house to grow in, versus moving and growing out of the house in 5 years, she argued that it was still too much. The truth was, I really wanted bigger, but I was compromising to keep her happy. One night we had both had enough of each other, and it all came to a head over a house. Edward, life isn't all about money, Bella sighed. I never said it was. All I'm saying is that I don't mind spending a little more to get exactly what we want, I explained. I get that, but to blow that much money on a house 2 times as big as we need, really? She challenged. Bella, you've said you'd like to have another baby, so there goes another bedroom, and then we need a guest bedroom. Honestly, I'm only looking at 4-bedroom houses because that is what you said. I really think we should look more towards the 5 or 6 range, I rebutted. 5 bedrooms. Exactly how many more kids do you want? If looks could kill, I would have been dead. Well, not 5, but another one, or maybe even 2 would be nice. But also think about a playroom for when my brother or sister come to town, or if Charlie comes to town, everyone will need a place to sleep. I answered in a clipped tone. Fine, go buy whatever you want. I'll just live there. Bella threw up her hands, and I began to feel defeated. She turned away from me, walked out of the office door, and left me sitting there alone. I stared down at the picture of the house that I thought would be perfect, but it only served to start another fight. Several minutes went by, and I had calmed down enough to follow after Bella. When I found her, she was huddled up on the couch with her head on the armrest while her eyes stared into space. I didn't care now if she'd want me to touch her or not, but I decided to be daring and sit down next to her. I then moved to wrap my arms around her. I'm sorry, I whispered, and I could feel her head move towards me. I am, too, she whispered back. I'm really stressing out. I know, I sighed. I am, too. Bella sat up and shifted so that I was now holding her in my arms. Can we look at more houses in a few days? Bella asked cautiously. I just feel like this entire week has been so jammed-packed with moving stuff that I could use a break. Of course, I immediately responded. What do you think of a mini vacation to North Carolina? Maybe trying to find a house online was a bad idea. We could go for a few days and actually tour some of these places. That actually sounds like a good idea, Bella responded positively. Alice and Jasper leave in a few days, so I'm sure they'll want to see us, but we could go next week. Fly out Monday and be home Thursday, I suggested. What about Nathan? Bella asked curiously. We'll bring him, too, and I'll find a hotel that has suites so he has his own room. I'm sure I can find one that would carry 2 beds for us, I replied, though I hated what I was saying. If there was anything else that excited me about North Carolina, beyond the obvious moving out of Forks, was the prospect of moving into a master bedroom with Bella. I'm sure you could, but I'm sure we could share one, too. Bella replied absent-mindedly. Okay, I answered, not wanting to question her. The next day I booked on a flight from Seattle to Raleigh. From there we'd rent a car and would have a room at the Hilton. Blank, underscore, blank. You didn't have to drop this off. I pushed as I held up a casserole dish Bella had used to feed Alice and Jasper a few nights back. Their movers had shown up, and instead of opting for pizza, Bella cooked baked ziti and garlic bread, and we all ate on their floor. I could have come to you. I know you have to be busy. Alice looked at me like I had two heads before explaining they had everything well under hand. Are you going to see Emmett tonight? I asked casually. Yeah, once you drop Nathan off we're all going to dinner, she answered. And for a second, I missed the part about Nathan. You're going to dinner with Rosalie and Emmett, but we're not invited? I asked, mildly offended. We'll have Nathan and W. He had dinner with you and Bella last night, remember? She reminded me. I'm going to miss you, Alice said out of nowhere. Dinner had ended a while before, and Nathan was having a heated debate with his uncle Jasper about the importance of superheroes in today's society. According to Nathan, there could be no one better than Superman, but Jasper argued that Batman had it all. Bella and Alice had gone into the kitchen to clean up, which left me alone to my own thoughts. Dinner had been pleasant and not overly emotional, which I appreciated, but I couldn't explain the pain I felt in my chest. Ice and I hadn't been extremely close before Nathan's kidnapping, and even afterwards, I still felt like I was at arm's length with her. Her confession about hating me while we were growing up was more than a little surprising. And even though we went out of our way to spend more time together, something always felt like it was missing. Alice had found me on the back porch, and I immediately whipped around upon hearing her words. I'm going to miss you, too, I immediately answered. Alice walked up to my side and stared out at the sky just like I had been doing before she startled me. You know, you're always welcomed in Texas. She started. You're always welcomed in North Carolina, I replied. I'm not sure exactly what I should be saying, but I want you to know that I really am going to miss you. I'll miss our coffee trips. And of course I'll miss Bella and Nathan. Alice's tone sounded nervous. Yeah, me too, but now you have to scout out all the coffee places in Texas, so when I come to visit we can hit one up together. I tried to joke but failed miserably. Instead, I looked down at Alice and laughed. You know, we suck at this, I started, and she nodded in agreement. I do love you, though, and I just want you to be happy. Thank you, she smiled. You seem to make Bella really happy. Happier than I think I've ever seen her before, and that gives me hope. Hope for what? I asked. That we can all still be normal, even after all we've gone through, she answered as I watched one of her hands move to her belly. Alice was small-framed and tiny, so only a small bump could be seen so far. But it was impossible to miss the love in her eyes when she touched her belly or spoke of my unborn niece or nephew. You're going to be a great mom, I commented, and she looked over at me. For the longest time, I never thought we'd ever try. I knew Jasper wanted children, but I just couldn't. I was so scared that I would hurt my child like I had been, and I didn't want to risk that, Alice explained. What changed your mind? I asked curiously. It was just a feeling. For the first time I felt like I wasn't complete, like we weren't completed. And when I sat down with Jasper, he and I agreed we wanted to try. And, well, here we are. She laughed as her whole face lit up. Silence followed as I took in her words. It's getting late, Alice pointed out. We have some errands to run in the morning. But we'll see you again before we leave. I turned towards Alice and gave her a hug. I love you, sis, I whispered into her ear. I heard a small choke, and when I pulled back from her body I saw tears forming in her eyes. I told myself I wouldn't cry. She whispered more to herself than me. I love you too, little brother. She lightly hit my arm and turned to go inside. A few more minutes passed before I turned around to see Jasper staring at me from the doorway. When he saw that he had my attention he simply nodded his head, and I knew I had done right in his eyes. I went to bed that night feeling like I had finally broken through with Alice. Even though we'd now be living so far apart, for the first time, I finally felt closer to her than ever before. Hold on, you want Nathan to go, too? I started to take into account what she had just said. Yup, you won't have a go-to babysitter soon enough, so my gift to you on my last night in this god-forsaken town is a night alone with Bella. Alice explained like I should have already known her plan. Are you sure? I asked incredulously. Surely Alice and Jasper had better plans than to keep Nathan on their last night in Forks. I am, and besides, it'll be the last time we see him for a while, so don't take this time away from me. Alice crossed her arms and gave me a hard look. Okay, I raised my hands in the air to show I'd surrendered. I just assumed you guys would have more last-minute planning or something, and I didn't want him to be an inconvenience, I tried to explain. Well, when he becomes one, I'll let you know, but until then, check with Bella. Then drop him off at 6, she ordered before turning on her heel and headed for her car. I walked back into the house confused with what had just happened. But I noticed Bella standing in the doorway as she laughed at me. So, I guess it's just you and me tonight? I let my question hang in the air while I wrapped my arms around her and leaned down for a kiss. Ew, Mom, Dad, Nathan whined, and I chuckled against Bella's lips. With my arms still around Bella's waist, we both looked over at Nathan, who looked like he was faking gagging. Nathan, I thought we explained, Bella trailed on, but Nathan shook his head, and she stopped talking. You did, I get it, but I don't want to see it gross, he muttered as he walked in the direction of the kitchen. My kisses aren't gross, I joked. Are my kisses gross, Bella? I asked as our faces lined up again. Nope, kiss, not, kiss, it, kiss, all. I hummed as my lips hovered just above her. Maybe we should ask Nathan if he'd like to spend the night at Alice's? I asked after I redirected my thoughts back to where they were before. We should do that. Bella's voice sounded dazed. I let my arms drop, but I gave her another chaste kiss before we meandered our way to the kitchen. Blank. Nathan had been more than agreeable to stay with Alice once we explained all of the details, and he even boasted that he felt special because he was going to a special dinner that we weren't invited to. Bella offered to drive him over while I was sorting through papers on my desk, and I readily agreed. Nathan hadn't seemed to mind me telling him goodbye at the door, so once I heard the click, I rushed back to what I had been doing. While putting all of my unopened mail into a pile, I realized another letter from the hospital in Denver sat with them. I huffed as I took a seat and opened the envelope. Sure enough, it was Aneth. Acceptance letter to a position I still didn't want. After not hearing anything after the first letter, I simply shredded it and went on about my day like I'd never read it, but now that the Seiko ND letter had shown up, I was more than a little annoyed. I read to the end and quickly dialed the phone number and extension given. Dr. Kasself speaking. A female's voice rang through, momentarily catching me off guard. I had assumed drive. Ron Kasself was a man. Hi, this is Edward Cullen speaking. I got out before I was interrupted. Oh, hi, I'm sorry. Can you hold for 1 second? She rushed. And I heard crackling noises in the background. My apologies, I was going through some files now. I assume you got my letter. Yes, I did, I started, but again was cut off. Great, so then you know about the position. When did you want to start? She rushed, and my aggravation was now off the charts. I think there has been a misunderstanding. I never applied for a position, and I am not interested, I stated forcefully. I see. Well, your resume appeared on my desk, and after talking to Carlisle, I had thought, now it was my turn to cut her off. You're saying my dad is the reason I was offered this job? I asked in disbelief. Well, no, I mean, he called about it and said you were looking for a fresh start. He and I go way back, so I offered to look at your resume, and that was when I realized you had won the bid to come on staff out of your residency, so I did some more digging. I saw your resume, and all your contacts had nothing but stellar comments to say, so I typed up the letter. And have been waiting to hear back from you, she explained in a far less chipper tone than when we had started. I see. Well, despite the previous job offer out of college, just like then, I'm going to have to say no. I'm currently not even speaking with my father, so I'm not sure what he would want to waste your time, I stated evenly. Oh, was her only reply for a minute. Edward, if you will, you should understand the position I want you here for would open up some amazing opportunities in your field, and I understand you chose not to take the job back then because of personal reasons. But I urge you to reconsider now. I appreciate the opportunity, but I'm still not interested, I quipped. Well, then, I guess I'll pull the file I have, but, Edward, if it's a matter of money I'm sure more could be offered. Did you know they were ready to offer you twice as much when the hospital first sought you out? She tried to reel me back in with information I couldn't have cared less about. They offered me a lot of incentives back in college, but like I told them then, Denver isn't where I need to be, so it has nothing to do with money, I snapped. I was beyond irritated, not just because my dad had no business stepping back into my life like this, but because I was wasting the time I had set aside to prepare before Bella came back. I started to get this woman off the phone when I saw a shadow in the doorway, causing me to drop the phone and hang up on her anyways. I then realized Bella was already home and had potentially listened to me admitting the biggest lie I had ever told her. I know Forks isn't what you wanted, but they offered you a job, right? Bella asked, concerned. They did, and it'll be fine, I'm sure. Denver wasn't that important anyway. I faked, smiled while simultaneously folding the acceptance letter and shoving it into my back pocket as quickly as possible. Edward, you know if you were accepted there, Nathan and I would make it work, right? Bella offered, but I knew better than to believe that. Not just because of the absolute emotional meltdown Bella had when she first broached the topic of moving to Forks, but also because I didn't want my son raised in a major city. When I first started college, I wanted to work in Denver. It had one of the top-rated facilities for children, and I knew I could use it as a stepping stone to get into an even better-equipped hospital. However, that was before Bella came into my life, and then Nathan. Now I had to think about him, and her by default, and that meant no Denver as hard as that pill had been to swallow. Hiding it from her was easy at first because I hid the letters, but once the phone calls and the offers started, it got harder. Once we officially moved to Forks and I took my position on the pediatrics floor, it all stopped, and until now I never realized I'd hear from Denver again. You were listening? I asked anxiously as a cloud of emotions overtook Bella's face. I couldn't tell if the glare in her eyes was from a tear or sheer anger that I had lied so many years ago. However, I stood by my decision then. They were just more important than Denver had ever been. Why didn't you tell me? Bella whispered with a catch in her throat. She had small silent tears rolling down her face, and every instinct in my body told me to bring her to me to comfort her. Instead of answering, I stood up and walked to the doorway she stood in. My hand raised up to her cheek and wiped away every tear I could reach before allowing my lips fall on hers. I rested my forehead on hers and looked into her eyes. Because you were too important for me to lose, and from the moment you gave me the gift of our son, my life stopped being about what I wanted. I'd still go back in time and choose your happiness, and now. I love you way too much to choose anything else. I spoke with as much conviction as I felt. Why couldn't you have told me the truth? I would have understood, Bella pushed, but I shook my head. No, you wouldn't have. I mean, you would have sacrificed yourself and pushed me to take the job. I know it's hard to believe, but I did care about you then, and you needed to come home. And I never really minded Forks, I explained. After all these years I thought it was because this was the only job you were offered, Bella muttered absent-mindedly, and I couldn't control the snort that escaped my lips. Bella caught on and glared at me. How many offers did you get? A few, I replied evasively. I see, Bella sighed. Hold on, go back, though. To which part? I asked. You love me? It sounded like a question, and I chuckled. Very much so. I've been trying to wait for the perfect moment to tell you, but I guess I screwed that up, I sighed. It was perfect, Bella whispered. I love you, too. I gasped as the four most amazing words that has even been said to me, next to, you have a son, echoed in my head. I saw the sincerity on her face, and I knew she wasn't lying. She loved me. I never thought I'd ever hear you say that, I muttered. You really love me? I do. You're not the same man as before, you're different. You're more, she trailed off as my lips crashed into hers. Our lips together felt needy and frantic. My hands immediately moved to her face as her arms wrapped around my neck. Bella, I pulled back. We should slow. It's okay, I'm ready, she assured me, and my brain had to focus on her words. She was ready for oh. You're sure? I asked, wanting to be certain. Yes, she answered, and I could see in her eyes she was telling the truth. We should move to a bedroom, I announced, and she nodded her head. I took her by her hand and led her into her bedroom. She not only had the comfier bed, but I also wanted her to feel safe. Even though we had technically had sex once, I still felt like a fumbling fool as my hands shook from nerves. Bella had on a simple pair of jeans with a buttoned-up plaid shirt and an undershirt. Her hair was thrown up, yet loose strands managed to fall around her shoulders. On anyone else, the look may be considered frumpy, but on Bella it was innocently erotic. Bella, I mumbled. B-U-T. She quickly silenced me with her mouth. My fingers worked to undo the buttons on the front of her shirt, while I felt her hands tug on the polo I had tucked in. When I imagined our first time together, I had assumed we'd move slow and take our time savoring each moment, but in reality we both were in a frenzied state. Both of us pulling at the other's clothes with force and purpose until we both rested on the bed that was behind us. Once Bella's naked form had been laid out before me, I felt like I had lost all consciousness of time. Though Bella wasn't a virgin, I knew it had still been years since she had had any sexual encounters, and, frankly, I didn't want the details of whether penetration toys had been used or not. "I'll be careful," I heard myself saying without much understanding of how I'd said it. "I'm not breakable," Bella countered, and though I nodded, my internal monologue was disagreeing her with. Bella wasn't breakable, but she deserved more than a fast fuck, and as the reality of what was about to happen came crashing down around me, I realized I needed to slow us down. Bella was worth more than I was just about to give her. Bella's legs parted to each side, and it allowed me room to sink down to her level. Our mouths met, moving in sync with each other, while I used one hand to prop myself and the other to move slowly from her shoulder to breast. When our mouths came apart, I sat back onto my knees for a second before placing my tongue on her breast. I teased and sucked each of them, all while earning soft moans from Bella's beautiful mouth. I could feel the rise and fall of her chest, along with the acceleration of her heartbeat. One of my hands slid down to her clit and began to play with her sensitive area. In truth, I had no idea how long I would last. And I knew I needed to help Bella along before there were any joining of bodies. Her hips would raise to meet my hand as I slid my fingers in and out of her. The tone of her moans turned more jagged and breathless, and I knew she was close. I heard a small whimper escape as I withdrew my hand and began to line myself up to her body. Our eyes locked, and I could see the love she held for me glowing around her. Light beads of sweat had formed around her face, but she didn't look tired. If anything, she looked refreshed. As the tip of my cock lined up with her moist opening, I found myself at a loss for words. I wanted to tell her how perfect she was, how much I loved her, and how thankful I was to have her in my life, but I couldn't. My brain was failing me, but it didn't matter, because Bella saw exactly how I felt. "I feel the same way," she whispered, and relief washed over me as she answered my unspoken adoration for her. I heard her hiss as I rocked into her, and even though I went slow, I could still feel how tight she was. My hips moved very slowly and gently at first until I watched her face melt of all irritation. As our bodies joined together for the first time that I could remember, I felt every emotion in the book. I also realized that the flood of feelings were something I had never felt before, not even with my own wife. My body seemed to move on its own accord, and it was the sudden gasp and moan from Bella that caused me to stop thinking and just turn myself over to feeling her. When I looked up, I realized she had pulled her legs back slightly, and the EU position was causing her an extreme amount of pleasure. Though it was probably egotistical to smile, I did so anyways as she came around me, squeezing me tight and causing me my own climax. Making love to Bella for the second time was nothing like I had pictured in my mind, but it was perfect. It was perfect for us, and for the rest of the night we switched between cuddling and making use of our time alone. "Dad, I'm tired," Nathan whined as he moved sluggishly to the car. "I know, buddy, but you can sleep on the way," I assured him as I finished packing up the last few bags before we headed out to Seattle. Bella, Nathan, and I were driving to SeaTac Airport to catch a 9 a.m. flight from Seattle to Raleigh. When we factored in traffic, travel time, parking, and security, we realized we'd need to leave Forks no later than 3 a.m. Of course, Bella was neither amused nor happy when I told her about the flight I'd scheduled, but I assured her she could sleep on the way, and it brought us into Raleigh at a decent hour. The goal was to land in Raleigh, pick up the rental car, check into the hotel, find something to eat, and get a good night's rest. Then we'd focus on scouting OUT potential areas and meeting with the realtor the next day. "Bella, go to sleep," I pushed after she yawned for the second time. "Nah, I'd rather stay up and keep you company," she replied back with a lazy smile. I kept one hand securely on the steering wheel while the other rested with Bella's hand on the center console. Our relationship seemed to be constantly revolving. After our night alone, I saw an even greater change. When we woke up wrapped up in one another's arms, her defenses seemed to have dissolved. It wasn't that I thought she was unhappy, but I could always feel the last bit of her guard she hadn't relinquished. Despite picking up Nathan shortly after we woke up, and having a tearful goodbye with Alice and Jasper, Bella and I were able to sneak away and talk later on. Nathan was playing in his room, which left Bella and I were alone in the kitchen. "Something is different," I spoke aloud. I wasn't sure how to address this new feeling, and it was awkward trying to word it. Okay, Bella nodded her head but looked away slightly. I don't mean a bad different. I just feel like you finally let me in all of me, I explained as I looked at her thoughtfully. B. LLA placed the cup she'd scrubbed 6 times over down into the sink and turned around to face me. Edward, last night was, Bella's voice trailed off, but I saw the hint of a blush on her cheeks as she turned her face away slightly. It was for me, too, I said as I walked over to her side of the room. When I overheard your conversation with the person in Denver, at first, I was angry. I couldn't believe you'd lied to me, but, more than that, I couldn't believe I fell for it. Then I heard you explain how important your family was, and I knew you meant me and Nathan. That was when I realized Had you really did care, not that I thought you didn't before, but for the first time I heard you speak so strongly about us without you knowing I was there. For the first time I felt like I could finally be free and let myself go, so I did. And you caught me. Last night was amazing. And I think for the first time I am finally seeing the future you're seeing. Bella spoke with truth and conviction. I love you, I whispered against her forehead. I love you, too, I heard echoed back. Tonight I was thinking, I trailed off. Are you asking for permission to come to my bed? Bella asked incredulously with a chuckle. I guess I am, I muttered nervously. Then yes you can. Bella answered before kissing me and returning back to the dishes. That night, Bella and I spent another night in each other's arms. Only to repeat it again the next night. What are you smiling about? Bella asked out of the blue. I quickly turned my head to see her staring aimlessly at me. You, us, I answered. That's an awful big smile just for me. Bella mused. You're worth many more smiles than that, I replied honestly. Bella yawned again, and, within 5 minutes, she was asleep. Both Bella and Nathan slept until I was parking the car, and despite Bella's apologies, I continued to assure her it was no big deal. I knew she was tired, and it was my own fault for booking such an early flight. Airport security wasn't nearly as much of a nightmare as I had expected, and we got through with enough time to pick up breakfast before heading to our gate. The trip started off smoothly, minus Bella's offhanded remark about me booking first-class tickets. I simply reminded her that I couldn't downgrade now, which earned me an eye roll. I had a feeling we'd be having a hard discussion about money during this vacation. And I really wasn't looking forward to it. Boarding the plane was easy, and we were able to quickly get Nathan situated in his seat. The flight came with pre-programmed movies and television shows, but the portable DVD player was packed anyways. Bella gripped my hand the entire time we were ascending into the air, and that was when I learned of her fear of flying. Bella, I moved my lips close to her ear so Nathan wouldn't hear my panicked tone. With the grip Bella had, I was fearful that something was wrong. I'm sorry. Bella apologized and yanked her hand away. I've just never been a fan of flying. I put her hand back in mine and kissed her on her cheek. You can squeeze my hand anytime you need to, I soothed her. She laid her head against my shoulder, and I used my spare hand to smooth her hair down. Once we were safely in the air, Nathan was able to watch his movies while Bella wrote furiously in her notebook, and I pulled out a few medical journals I needed to get caught up on. Blank. Can I help you? The receptionist asked with a smile plastered on her face. We're here to check in, I explained while reaching for my license and credit card. What is the name, sir? She asked sweetly while looking down at her computer screen. Edward Cullen, I answered, and her head snapped up quickly. Oh, one moment, sir. Please, let me get Mrs. Wittenberg. She's been expecting you, she rushed. Seconds later, the young girl walked out of the office with another woman hot on her heels. Mr. Cullen, the woman screeched. Welcome to the Midtown Hilton. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Oh Lord, Bella is already eyeing me. And, Mrs. Cullen, such a pleasure to meet you, as well. Thank you, Bella replied. I couldn't be sure if Bella was annoyed or amused. You must be Nathan, Mrs. Wittenberg said as she knelt down to Nate and shook his hand. Your dad told me an awful lot about you, and I hope you enjoy your stay with us, too. I almost snorted at Nathan's look of utter disbelief but thought it would have been unkind. Mrs. Wittenberg, I started, but she cut me off. Oh please, call me Jacqueline, she corrected with a flutter of her eyes. Mrs. Wittenberg, Bella interjected, clearly annoyed. Thank you for your kindness, but our son is tired, and we'd really just love to check in so we can relax. Ella's hand immediately moved to mine as she smiled up at me. What Mrs. Wittenberg saw was the love Bella had for me as she stared up at me, but all I felt was the shooting daggers from Bella's eyes. Oh, of course, she stuttered before turning away and walking behind the desk. It only took a few seconds before we were being escorted to the elevators. Apparently she has pre-checked us in earlier, and all of the paperwork and keys were already done. On the elevator ride up, Mrs. Wittenberg explained the key function of the elevator and informed us that we would need it to access our room. It was information I already knew, but I kept my mouth shut as the lower floors passed by. Once the elevator stopped, the first room she showed us was the executive leisure room. It was a larger room with windows running along the back wall. It held several seating areas, small desks, and a flat-screen television. The large buffet area was stocked with freshly brewed coffee, stuff to make tea, fresh fruits, and snacks. It was also the area where breakfast was held in the mornings and the hors d'oeuvre in the evenings. Miss Mary, Mrs. Wittenberg called out without warning, and a middle-aged woman came out of the back room. "Hello," she greeted us politely, and I nodded my head at her. "Miss Mary, this is the Cullen family, and they'll be here through Friday. They'll be in the presidential suite, and I was just giving them a tour of the leisure room," Mrs. Wittenberg explained. "Welcome, and I hope you enjoy your stay. If I can be of any assistance, please don't hesitate to ask," she spoke sweetly. Unlike Mrs. Wittenberg's flirty tone, Miss Mary's tone sounded motherly. "Dad," I heard Nathan whisper up at me. I looked down to see his eyes had trailed off to a plate of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. "You haven't had dinner yet, Nate," I reminded him, but he started to pout. I looked up at Bella, who shrugged. "Grab two, but that is it," I instructed, and his face lit up. For being so well-behaved through the airports and flying, he deserved some sort of treat. "Here, sweetheart, let me help you," Miss Mary spoke as she trailed behind Nate. I watched as she used the tongs to pick up 2 cookies and place them in a special bakery-style bag. Nathan said his thank you before we left Miss Mary to the rest of her work. We walked down to the rest of the hall before we found our door. "This," Mrs. Wittenberg started to say as she used the key to open the door, "is the presidential suite. I have everything set up to your liking, including the stocked food and drinks you requested. I also added some smaller toys for your son that are in his bedroom, and a bucket of wine and chocolate-covered strawberries in the master suite. If I can be of any more service, please let me know. Day or night I can be reached." Her tone was anything but subtle. "Thank you, I'm sure we have it from here," I explained before seeing her out. I reached into my wallet and gave her a generous tip. ND prayed she'd leave us alone for the rest of our stay. I turned around to see Nathan had already gone off exploring while Bella stood seething. Edward, Bella's face was turning red. "Bella," I stepped closer to her. "Anthony," and redder. "Sweetheart," and closer. "Cullen," and angry. "Yes, baby?" I kissed her lips before she could say another word. "I don't even know what to say," she huffed after I pulled away. "Please," I begged, "can we just enjoy our time away, please?" She continued to huff, and it took a good 2 minutes before she finally started to calm down. "Mrs. Cullen?" She raised her eyebrows at me. I shrugged, not knowing how to respond. I had never referred to Bella as my wife when I called, but I wasn't disturbed by the mix-up. "Fine, but we will talk about this later," she warned. I expected nothing less. Now, for more important question: go out, order room service, or figure out who delivers? I asked as I eyed the clock that read well into the evening. Even with the time change, it was dinner time. "Room service, please," Bella answered as I watched her take in the sight of the room. The living room area that we walked into was decorated in black and whites. A small kitchen that I had requested be stocked was off to the left with a full dining room table and chairs to its front. A hallway led back to 3 total rooms. One was the master suite where Bella and I would be sleeping. A smaller bedroom for Nathan, and another I'd hoped would go unused during our time here. However, at the rate of Bella's anger, it may be where I would be sleeping tonight. I knew I should have told her about the room I booked, but I figured she'd try to change the reservation if she knew. The truth was, I just wanted the space and multiple rooms. Nathan would have his own room to give Bella and I some privacy, and the kitchen area provided us a place to cook when we got sick of eating out. I really didn't care how much it cost me, but, of course, Bella cared. "This is so cool," Nathan cheered as he came through the hallway. He was holding a bag full of gifts that had been left for him, and even though I hadn't requested it, I thought it was a nice bonus. Ella sat down and began going through everything and opened the packages, while I picked up the phone and ordered dinner. seconds after hanging up, but the bellhop arrived with our bags, and 30 minutes after that our food was delivered. While Nathan was full of energy when we first arrived, he could barely hold his head up through dinner. He took a few bites, pushed food around, dozed off, and repeated several times before Bella finally told him to get ready for bed. Within minutes, he was changed and sleeping peacefully in the queen-sized bed the room was furnished with. The night was still early, but I had to admit I was tired, too. Bella started to clear the dishes so they could be moved outside, and I told her I was going to take a quick shower. In the attempts of getting everything and everyone situated, I hadn't had a chance to change out of the clothes I'd been traveling in. When I walked into the master suite, I noticed the huge king-sized bed in the middle of the room. Sitting on top of it was a tray with 2 wine glasses, a bottle of red wine sitting in ice, and several chocolate-covered strawberries on pieces of wax paper. I smiled sadly knowing it would be going to waste tonight. The bathroom was large and modestly decorated. It contained a large jacuzzi hot tub, along with a freestanding shower and 2 sinks. After a quick look around, I pulled in one of my bags, shuffled around until I found a tee and sleep pants, and hoped into the shower. Blank. Bella, I called out, surprised as I walked out of the bathroom to see her. In a sleek black nightgown with a strawberry half in her mouth. She slightly jumped, causing the juices to slide down the sides of her lips. She coughed for a second before trying to swallow the piece already in her mouth. Oh, God, I'm sorry, but I was waiting, and they were just staring at me, and it was so good. She stumbled before she held up her half-eaten strawberry as an offering. I couldn't hold back my reaction. I laughed. I love you, I stated as my laughter wore off. Bella reached back over to the tray and grabbed another strawberry to hand to me. I chuckled as I crossed the room. ND leaned down low enough to eat the strawberry out of her hand. My eyes stayed locked on hers until I had devoured the berry whole. When I left the bathroom, all I wanted to do was sleep. Now all I wanted to do was quite the opposite of sleeping. I thought you were still angry with me, I spoke as I sat down on the bed. I was never angry, Bella started, but I looked at her with disbelief. Okay, maybe a little angry, but I knew you mean well. I just wished you'd have told me, that's all. Had I told you, do you think we would still be staying in this room? I asked as I uncorked the bottle of wine. Probably not, Bella answered honestly. I looked up at her and offered her a glass. Okay, I get it. I know money is still a touchy subject with me, but I just want to be included on the decision-making sometimes. Babe, I believe I told you I'd be finding a suite so that Nathan could have his own room, I pointed out. You did, and I definitely expected that. However, the presidential suite is still a few steps up from what I was expecting, she deadpanned. You're right, I'm sorry. I should have been more upfront, but I just wanted to have a nice place to come back to and relax, I explained. We both moved up towards the headboard, and I kept one arm wrapped casually around Bella while we both sipped our wine and munched on the strawberries. A comfortable silence followed, and I relished the feeling of having Bella in my arms. I haven't seen this before. I nodded my head at her nightgown after a while. I know, I didn't have a lot of nicer stuff, so I ordered some online. Do you like it? Bella asked shyly. Very much so, but you could make a potato sack look sexy. I chuckled, but I felt Bella's shoulder slump. Bella, that's a good thing. I know, she muttered softly. Did I upset you? I asked, concerned at the sudden change in tone. No, I just wanted to impress you, she admitted. Oh, I started while taking the glass out of her hand and placed it on the nightstand, followed by the tray and my glass. Are you tired? She shook her head. No. Then I'm going to show you exactly how much you've impressed me, I replied with a smirk on my face. That night came with a list of casualties. 5 strawberries, 1 wine glass, 1 pair of panties, and 1 chic black nightgown were all lost in my efforts to show Bella exactly what her in lingerie did to me. Blank. Mom, Dad, Nathan screamed the second he woke up. Bella and I immediately snapped awake and began running to him while fumbling with the complimentary bathrobes. When the door flew open, we saw Nathan sitting on the middle of the bed with a fear-stricken look on his face. Baby, what's wrong? Bella cooed and climbed into bed next to him. I got scared, he whispered. I forgot where we were, and when I woke up, I couldn't find you. Oh, buddy, we're right here, I soothed as I climbed into bed with them. I'm sorry, Nathan mumbled. Don't apologize, I'm just glad you're okay, I replied. What time is it? Bella asked after Nathan appeared to calm down quite a bit. About 7. Time for us to get up anyway. Are you ready for breakfast, buddy? I asked. He nodded and we all slowly broke away to get ready for the day. I was getting dressed when Bella came into the bathroom to shower. When her robe fell down around her, I gasped at the visible marks I'd left on her back the night before. What? She asked concerned. Your back? I do that? I asked as I walked up to inspect the long red marks. I don't feel anything. What's wrong? She questioned as she turned to see her back in the full-length mirror. I didn't. God, I'm sorry. I started to stutter, but she just laughed. So, no spaghetti strap top today. Got it. Edward, it's no big deal. Last night was worth it. She waved me off as she walked towards the shower. You're not angry? I asked confused. Not in the least. Last night was intense. She reassured me, and I could tell she was sincere. Though part of me was still disgusted, because Bella was my everything and she deserved better, I was relieved to see she wasn't mad. Don't stress yourself out, Edward. I still love you, she called out as she shut the shower door. The rest of the morning went by smoothly, including a trip to the leisure room for breakfast. Miss Mary had on a wide smile when Nathan walked in, and even though he was the only child, none of the other patrons seemed to mind his presence. Blank. Nathan, we're going to stop in for a meeting first. I've made sure you'll have an area to play in, but I'm sorry to say you may still be bored. We're going to talk about a few houses, and then we'll probably take a few tours, I started to explain once we were on our way to Apex. The drive was only scheduled to take about 20 minutes according to the GPS, but I wanted Nathan to know our plan. Okay, he said warily from the backseat. I know the meeting part will be boring, but once we start looking at houses it's as much your decision as ours, okay? I asked hoping he would cheer up. As long as it has a pool, he announced, and I saw Bella roll her eyes. Ever since we decided to move, Nathan insisted the new house had to have a pool. He didn't even care if it has a kitchen, he wanted a pool. Of course, I agreed, and he didn't say another word. When we arrived at the realtor, Mrs. Caitlin Honeysuckle came out to meet us. I thought I heard Bella snort when she introduced herself, but unlike the lady at the hotel, neither one of us minded calling her by her first name. So, first things first, welcome to Apex, she said as she pulled out a folder containing several of the houses we were already interested in touring. So far, you have a list of 5 total houses. 2 I can already knock off your list for different reasons, and I have several more potential options. Apex has recently gone through a bit of a housing boom, so we are in no short supply. The house you were looking at on Van Gogh Lane had an offer made and accepted already, so that one is out, and the one on Castline Circle was pulled off the market. The other 3 are still available for a walkthrough, but I wanted to go over your requirements one more time. That is, if you don't mind? She asked. We both nodded. How many bedrooms? Caitlin asked us. I was prepared to answer, but Bella cut in. We were originally looking at 4 bedrooms, but anything up to 6 and we'll consider it, Bella stated evenly, completely catching me off guard. Tellen shuffled through a few sheets of paper and began organizing them into piles. You said you wanted an attached garage? She asked without looking up. Yes, at least 2 cars, but no more than 3, I answered. And a pool? She questioned. Yes, it must have a pool, or at least enough space to build one, Bella answered. This caused several properties to go into the pass pile. Now, Mr. Cullen, you spoke about wanting to potentially live in a gated community. Is that still desired? She asked me directly. I looked over at Bella, who shrugged, so I explained that we'd be willing to look at either. I didn't want to put all of our eggs into one basket and make finding the perfect house impossible. Great, well, when would you like to start your walkthroughs? Caitlin smiled brightly at us. When are you available? We spoke about our limited time in the area, I reminded. I have my day cleared for you, so here's a list of addresses. She started writing furiously on a piece of paper. Does your car have a GPS? I nodded. Okay, great. Apex is relatively easy to navigate, but just in case we get separated. I drive the red Taurus, she explained as she motioned out the window to her car. Thank you, I spoke as I looked down at the list to see a total of 6 addresses. We loaded Nathan in the car and head off to Torrance Drive. It didn't take long before we were pulling in to the driveway of a beige 2-story house. From the front, it honestly looked like a rectangle. There was a 2-door garage, but the outside was not wowing. Caitlin was parked and walking towards us, as Bella grabbed my hand before I could turn the car off. "This isn't it," she stated. "We haven't even been inside." "Bella," I rebutted. "I know, but I promise, this isn't it. I don't want to live here," she pleaded, and I nodded. Caitlin came up to the window, and I explained that we'd be moving to the next house instead. She seemed to take the news in stride and headed back to her car. The morning appeared to turn better when we arrived at the house on Treeview Lane. At least Bella got out of the car, but within 5 minutes we were walking back out again. The trend continued on through to the middle of the afternoon. When Nathan finally complained about being hungry, we decided to forego the last house until after lunch. The once bright and smiling Caitlin had turned very weary, and I had to admit my frustration with Bella was raising. "It's too small, it's too big, it just doesn't feel right. The backyard isn't appealing. I hated that bathroom. It was all superficial, and, in some cases, with a little remodeling completely fixable. But Bella would have none of it. She wanted perfect, so as we drove to a nearby pizza place called Anna's Pizza, I continued to try and calm myself down. By the third house I wanted to lash out at her, because I thought it was perfect. 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a large backyard with a pool, a den, office area, a state-of-the-art kitchen, and enough living space to be comfortable. The ceilings were vaulted, the stairs leading towards the second floor had a wrap-around banister. The master bathroom was done in granite. I walked in to it thinking it would at least be a maybe, but Bella quickly dashed my hopes. After we left there, my attitude had been hard to bring up, but I knew for no one else's sake but Nathan, he didn't need to see his parents fighting. When we arrived downtown, I noticed an older man sitting in a set of rocking chairs just staring off into space. He smiled and nodded his head when he noticed us, but he went back to looking where he had been before. Caitlin had warned us that the train tracks could be heard downtown throughout the day, so I wasn't surprised when the loud noises of an impending train started to sound. I looked into the direction and noticed the water tower that read, "The Peak of Good Living." I sighed. I felt so defeated that I was beginning to wonder if we'd leave Apex and have to choose another city altogether. A nice older lady greeted us as we entered and pointed to a table to sit at. We ordered a large pizza to split amongst us, and while we were waiting, Bella started off with the question. "Nathan, what did you think of the houses so far?" she asked. "I don't know, the third one was okay." He sounded too skeptical to answer. "That was a nice house, I just don't know about the yard," she commented absent-mindedly. "What about you, Bella? Did you see anything you liked?" I snapped at her. Though my tone wasn't as snarky as I felt, it was still inappropriate. Not really," she answered while looking down. The pizza arrived shortly thereafter, and we ate in an uncomfortable silence. I left the restaurant to call Caitlin to let her know we were on our way to the last house of the day. It was already pretty late into the afternoon, and I knew all of our nerves were shot, but I wanted to get it out of the way for Bella to say no so we could find more to look at tomorrow. Bella and Nathan were both using the bathroom before we left, and as I shut my cell phone I opted to take a seat in the open rocking chair to wait for them. The older man I'd seen before was still seated where he had been, and he didn't seem bothered by my occupation of the seat next to him. "Long day?" he asked out of nowhere. "You could say that," I chuckled. "You have a beautiful family," he complimented. "Thank you," I replied back, unsure of what else to say. "Son, we all have our bad days. But, at the end of them, we all have our families, and outside of that, we don't need anything else. Your day will get better, just wait and see. And, if it doesn't, tomorrow is a new day." He stopped speaking, and I looked over at him in shock. I didn't know why, but his words brought me a lot of comfort. When I looked back, I noticed Bella and Nathan coming out of the restaurant. The sun was already starting to shift, and when the sun hit Bella it made her glow. A rush of cool air blew past us, and the bottom of the sundress she'd been wearing blossomed out. For a second, she looked like an angel, and that was when I realized the old man was right. My day would get better because I had them. I turned back to thank him, but he was already gone, so instead I looked up and said a silent prayer before meeting Bella and Nathan at the car. The drive to the last house was a ways out, and Bella dozed off on the way. As I parked in the driveway of the house on Markham Drive, I was struck by the unique beauty of the exterior. It looked like it could have come out of a history book. The style was obviously colonial with a traditional touch to it. The house was made of red brick with dark black trim and white columns. I immediately noticed a medium-sized balcony on the second floor that I assumed connected to the master bedroom. I'd only beaten Caitlin by a few minutes, but when I said the word, "Wow," Bella startled awake. "We're here," I announced as I exited the car. Caitlin was busy explaining the house and all its amenities. It was 4,450 square feet, with 6 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms. It included a chef's kitchen with granite countertops, an in-ground pool with hot tub, and a screened gazebo and dock that lead to a stocked pond. Overall, the house sat on 5 acres of land. As we walked from room to room, I could see the family pictures above the fireplace, Bella and I reading with each other in the living room, Nathan running around the backyard, and fishing together out by the pond. I was so scared to look at Bella's face for fear of rejection. Nathan took off to explore one of the downstairs rooms, and just as Caitlin was about to move us upstairs, I asked for the main sheet and excused us to tour ourselves. She simply nodded and explained she'd go find Nathan and show him the pool area. As Bella and I made our way up the stairs, I took a look at the price. When I saw the house was on the market for close to $1 million, I realized right there I had already lost the battle. When we reached the master bedroom, I heard Bella lightly gasp. I looked over at her and noticed her entire face seemed to soften. I was correct in assuming the balcony connected to the bedroom, and I really could already see Bella and I lounging out during the summer and simply enjoying the company of each other. "You haven't said anything yet," I stated cautiously. "This is it," Bella started confidently. "You're sure? You haven't seen the backyard, or the dock, or the—" My voice trailed off the second Bella looked over at me, and I saw tears in her eyes. This is perfect, Edward. I want this house," she ordered. "Then we'll buy this house." I nodded my head and smiled. "You see it too, don't you?" Bella asked and I nodded. "Bella, I need to warn you about something. This house is a little out of the range we were looking at before," I proceeded with extreme caution now. "How much?" she questioned. $950,000. I tried to whisper, but she heard me. We can, but I don't know." "Edward?" She looked panicked. "Yes, we can afford it, and no, I don't want to walk away from it," I pushed. "But," she tried, but with one finger to her lips I shut her up. "Bella, we both know I have a lot of money. We also know you have quite a bit of money. Together we have more than a lot of money. However, none of that matters. What I see when I look at my account statements is security. I know my son will always have every basic essential he'll ever need without question. I'll always be able to put a roof over our heads. There will never be a day where we have to choose between feeding Nathan or feeding us, and I swear to God, Bella, I don't care what the bottom line is. I know money is touchy, and I understand that. I've made more mistakes with you than I can count, and for some crazy reason you've given me a chance anyway. But please, do not let a mistake I made when I was 21 years old ruin this. You see our family here, I see our family here, and we can afford this. I alone could afford this, and with your money too, we could buy it flat out if we wanted to. I know you think I'm flashy with money, but I swear to you, I'm not. I just want to provide for you and Nathan and give you the best possible life I can. Please let me do that," I begged her to. Understand that sometimes money didn't matter. This wasn't like choosing the difference between name brand jeans or a value brand. This was a home we could feasibly spend the rest of our lives in. If there was one area of life I refused to settle in, this was it. Bella looked up at me and nodded. "We need to talk to Nathan," she announced, and I agreed. Before we walked downstairs to find our son, we passed a spare room close to the master bedroom. It had a large window that had a gorgeous view of the front yard. "This room would make a great nursery," I remarked offhandedly, and Bella's head snapped towards me. She looked thoughtful for a second before agreeing. "Yeah, it would. A lot can be done with that window, and with the closet on that wall it would enough wall space to do a full-sized mural. I bet greens and purples would look really pretty when the sun shines in, but the crib would definitely need to go in that corner." Bella continued to rattle off about nursery designs, and all I could do was smile. She looked so animated and full of life as she spoke, and there was nothing I wouldn't give her at that moment in time. "A girl, huh?" I joked as we moved towards the stairs. "I'd like a daughter." Bella sounded wistful. Before I had a chance to say anything else on the matter, Nathan was barreling up to us to explain how awesome the pool was, and how excited the pond made him. He said we had to invite Papa Charlie out to go fishing, even though he'd say it was cheating since Caitlin told him it was stocked. As Caitlin lead us out, I explained that we'd be in contact with her tomorrow. I still wanted to think it over for a night, and it was a decision we all needed to be a part of. We headed to the Beaver Creek Shopping Center for Outback and Coldstone. Blank. So, Nathan likes the house, I commented as I climbed into bed. All through dinner Nathan begged us to buy it. He even offered his entire piggy bank to add to the funds. I had to chuckle at that, but it was a nice gesture. We explained to him that it was a high possibility, but we would still need to sit down and talk about it. Once we gave him ice cream, he seemed to forget about the house long enough to eat and pass out on the way to the hotel. I ended up having to carry him to the elevator because he was too tired to walk. Yeah, you could say that, Bella replied as she climbed in next to me. Come here. I patted the pillow with my arm outstretched on it, and Bella came up and curled her body into mine. Now, do you still want it? I asked honestly. I do, she answered softly. Tonight Bella was donning a navy blue nightgown with sheer fabric for the sides. I could see the hint of a matching thong, as hard as it was not to focus on her clothes, or lack thereof. I knew we needed to finish talking about the house. Are we going to offer their list value? I asked. Edward, Bella spoke quietly. I replied as my hand moved up and down her arm. Would you be offended if I just asked you to deal with it all? The house is perfect, and the more I think about it, the more you're right. I don't exactly like the price, but it's fair for the house in the area. I just want it, and I will probably never say this again, but I don't care what it takes to get it. She sounded cautious as she confessed her true desire for the house. So, I'm in charge? I chuckled. Don't get an inflated ego on me now, she mocked annoyance. Well, something is definitely inflated, and it's not my ego. I laughed as Bella let me ravish her body for the second night in a row. Blank. So the plan is to drop Nathan and I off at the mall while you meet with someone, and then we meet back up and check out Jordan Lake? Bella asked, and I nodded. How long do you think you'll be, Dad? Nathan asked as we drove towards Beaver Creek. Hopefully no more than an hour or two. It'll give you and your mom time to eat lunch, and maybe do a little shopping. I suggested, maybe you can find a place to pick up a volleyball or something for the beach. That sounds cool, Nathan called out as he got out of the vehicle. Bella leaned over and kissed me before I drove a few blocks away to meet with a property owner about some land I wanted to build on. From the time I parked until I walked out of the meeting, I looked down at my watch to see only 90 minutes had passed. The meeting had gone in my favor, and the next day I would be driving around to 3 different locations in Raleigh to make my decision on where to build. I pulled out my cell phone and had Bella and Nathan meet me at the entrance so we could go off for a little family time. Jordan Lake was nice and very family-oriented. Nathan was able to splash around in the water, while Bella and I stayed on land and soaked up the sun. Like I'd asked, Bella picked up a volleyball, and after a few hits back and forth Nathan announced he needed more practice. I couldn't help but laugh. The day grew later and it was time for us to find somewhere to eat for dinner. Bella offered to cook back at the hotel, and after eating out so much, I jumped at the chance of a home-cooked meal. When we arrived back, Nathan made a quick stop for more cookies before we headed to our room. Bella told Nathan to go take a shower to get all of the sunscreen and sand off of his body. And he quickly jumped into motion. Why don't you go take a quick shower? I offered Bella, but she explained she needed to start browning some meat. I took a look at the hamburger she pulled out of the refrigerator and assured her I could be in charge of that. She looked skeptical but told me it would only take her about 5 minutes. As I stood in the kitchen with a spatula in my hand, I was reminded of the old man I'd met the day before. His words had never rung truer, and I was thankful for a little perspective at that moment. Had I walked into the last house with the attitude I had, I wasn't so sure if I would have still been as excited about it. I had placed a call into Caitlin earlier and gave our official offer. She told me she would inform the owners, and I would have their decision within 48 hours. She offered to let us tour a few more houses as a backup plan, but I denied that. We found our house, and if we couldn't have it, we'd find somewhere else. My demands weren't unreasonable. I only asked that the closing cost and inspection be covered, and that the closing date was no later than 2 weeks before the new school year started. That gave us roughly 6 to 7 weeks to finalize everything, and I'd hoped that would be enough time. Before I had a chance to burn the meat, Bella took over and gave me a chance to freshen up. I tried to playfully kiss her neck and shoulders, but she shooed me away claiming I stunk. I put my nose up in the air and walked away. Blank, underscore, blank. The rest of our vacation we silently sat on pins and needles. Nathan was oblivious to our stress, but waiting to hear back about the house was agonizing. After 24 hours I feared the worst, and even though I had found and put in an offer on the best piece of land to build an office on, it still didn't keep me happy. When we woke up on Thursday and realized it was our last full day there, I started to panic. Friday would be hectic with doubling checking our luggage, turning in the car, and flying back home. I didn't want to do that without knowing. We planned out the last day so we had no business to handle. In fact, we called it a hotel day. Bella and I lounged around openly cuddling and reading. Nathan played with his toys, and around noon we went for a family swim. Though the pool was fun, and wore Nathan out enough that he needed to take a nap before dinner. And my eyes never left my cell phone. When we got back up to the room, Bella put her foot down. "You have to stop staring at it," she said as she grabbed my phone and tried to put it on the counter. "But what if I miss a call?" I replied back irrationally. "Then you call back," she soothed. "Look, Nathan is sleeping, and we've had absolutely no time to enjoy the hot tub in that bathroom. Don't make me beg," she whispered seductively into my ear. "Bella," I strangled out. I left my cell phone on the countertop and walked into the bathroom with Bella without a second thought. The water was hot and the jacuzzi function was amazing on my back. "We need to get one of these," Bella commented, and I smirked. "If we got the house we'd have one," I replied internally. "You're amazing," I whispered into her ear as I began to massage her shoulders. Bella moved so she was sitting between my legs with her back against my chest. "MHH, that feels good," Bella sighed. We spent out time lovingly caressing each other, cuddling up in each other's arms, and kissing, but it didn't move any further than that. When we exited the tub, the first thing I checked was my phone, but I hadn't missed any calls. I decided the phone would remain on the counter and I would try not to be OCD about checking it. Nathan eventually woke up and we caught a baseball game on the TV. Bella cooked us chicken and rice for dinner, and we all huddled around the table to eat. Time slowly ticked away after Nathan fell back asleep for the night. And, 6 minutes after 9, my phone finally rang. Blank, underscore, blank. "Edward, you're scaring me. What did she say?" Bella rushed out quickly. I stood frozen in place as I hung up the phone with Caitlin. Panic started to overtake Bella's beautiful features. But every time I moved to speak, I couldn't. "Edward, please," she begged, and I did the first thing I could think of. I hugged her. "We got it," I whispered into her ear, and she actually squealed. "For real? It's ours for sure?" Bella asked for more confirmation than what I had just said. She said they accepted the offer, and, if all goes accordingly, we should be able to close in about 4 weeks. "Bella, the house is ours, baby. It's ours," I cheered. Our eyes locked and suddenly the excitement in the air changed. An intensity took over, and by the look in her eyes I could see she felt it too. Our lips crashed together as we began to passionately kiss, the feelings of lust and love consuming us. In the flash of a second, Bella and I were already ripping each other's clothes off. The stress and anxiety began to melt off as fast as our clothes could fly. Bella took the lead this time and had me on my back in mere minutes, while she straddled me with both of her legs. There were no soft caresses or murmured words of adoration. There were no forms of foreplay or even whispered, "I love yous." That night it was about her and I coming together with such extreme emotion, relief, and excitement that words weren't needed. Her eyes spoke for her, and everything she gave, I returned. Each thrust of her hips was met with a thrust of my own, my arms cupped securely around her bottom to ensure she wouldn't fly away, and the lights were just bright enough that I could see the throw back of her head as her walls tightened around me. As her climax overtook her, she brought me with her as my hips feverishly thrusted against her for as much friction as I could feel. That night, we both burst into a million pieces separately, and came back together as one. Blank, underscore, blank. Friday was met with a mix of exhaustion and frustration. We woke up a little late and that alone put Bella and I in a rushed frame of mind. Caitlin assured us there was no paperwork needed to be dealt with just yet, and she would fax or mail anything we needed to handle before we officially moved. The closing date was set for exactly 1 month, which meant once we got back to Forks we'd have to hit the ground running to begin preparation of the move. The flight home was as equally long as it was exhausting. When we landed, I realized I had a voicemail from the man who owned the property I wanted in Raleigh. Honestly, I had been so excited about the house that I hadn't given much thought to the second offer I had made. Of course, I was thrilled to find out that offer was also accepted. And I arranged for the paperwork to be done around the same time as the house. It also meant adding more to my to-do list, because I now needed to get finalized blueprints and hire a construction team. Put out a notice out for interviews, become certified in the state of North Carolina, and so forth. Good news? Bella asked as we made our way back to our own car. I got the property, I stated simply. Everything seems to be coming together nicely, she replied positively with a smile on her face. Yes, it is. I reached out and grabbed her hand. After a 4.5-hour drive back to Forks, we finally arrived a little after 6. Once we were inside, and Nathan was busy putting away his backpack of toys, I pulled Bella aside to talk. Bella, are you okay? I asked, worried. She'd been looking a little green since we'd landed, and I was beginning to worry she'd caught a bug in North Carolina. That, of course, was not including the several stops we made on the drive home so she could throw up. I'm fine, she brushed off. I've just never been a fan of flying. If you're sure, I replied. Still, why don't you go lie down, and I'll get Nathan settled. I can start unpacking, fix some dinner, and work on laundry. Fix dinner? Bella raised her eyebrow, amused. Order dinner, I corrected sheepishly. She chuckled before walking off to bed. That night I opted for ordering in pizza, but when I tried to wake Bella up she just rolled over or shooed me away. So, instead, Nathan and I enjoyed pizza in front of a ball game on ESPN. I made Sir Nathan was bathed and dressed in pajamas before I tucked him in, only after reassuring him that Bella probably just had a stomach bug and it was nothing to worry about. I cleaned up after the pizza box and started to unpack our bags. I did the essentials first and restocked both of the bathrooms with our toothbrushes, toothpaste, shampoo, conditioner, loofahs, and so forth. Next I moved on to aerating all of the dirty clothes from the things we managed to keep clean. I decided starting laundry would be a waste of time since I probably wouldn't have been up late enough to switch it over. I opted for a quick shower before snuggling up beside Bella for the night. As soon as my body hit the bed, she curled up into me with a sigh of contentment. Bella's hair blew wildly because of the wind that had suddenly appeared. Her dress expanded around her, and the sun on her skin caused her to glow. The town of Apex was empty aside from us, but I could see the sign for Anna's Pizza in the background. The rocking chair swayed back and forth, even though no one was sitting in them, and it continued for several seconds. Bella was smiling as she held Nathan's hand, and I sat as an outsider to their interactions. I looked all around, but couldn't make out the view of anything else beyond them. The wind died down suddenly, and my head snapped back to Bella. Her once neat hair was now a mess around her face, and the soft sunshine glow of her skin now muted to its pale tone. However, her dress never went down. On second glance, I realized it wasn't the wind that was expanding Bella's dress, it was her belly. I startled awake as my dream came flooding back to me. I glanced at the clock and realized it was only 3 a.m., but I noticed Bella's eyes open and blink up at me. Edward, she croaked, her throat dry from sleep. What's wrong? You're pregnant, I stated evenly, and Bella shot up. What? She snapped. You're pregnant. I don't know how I know, but I just know you are. I don't even know if you're late yet, but you will be. I know this, you're pregnant. I knew what I was saying sounded crazy, but I just knew. Bella stuck out her hands and began counting on her fingers for a few minutes before turning back towards me. Edward, I wouldn't be late for another 3 days. I really don't think, she trailed off as I shook my head. Bella, you're pregnant, or you're becoming pregnant at this very second. But regardless, you are or will be, I pushed. Do you want me to test? She asked quietly. Do you have one? I asked dumbfounded. Yeah, I may have known about Alice before you did. She made me promise not to tell, but she was too scared to do it alone, and she wanted to know before she tested in front of Jasper, Bella explained, and for a second I was aggravated, but decided it wasn't worth it. She left a test here. I think you should. I nodded my head, and Bella scurried out of bed. When she walked back and a few minutes later her face was expressionless. Look, as exciting as this would be, I think you're wrong. The test is in there so you can go look, but I'd rather not get my hopes up, so have it. It should be ready in like a minute. Bella spoke almost defensively as she crawled back into bed and turned away from me. This was the first time I'd heard Bella say anything about wanting to be pregnant now, and even I had to admit the timing wouldn't be perfect. But I knew I was right. So, I waited the minute and walked into the bathroom. Sure enough, Bella left the stick flipped upside down on the countertop. When I rotated it around, I was met with my answer. I walked back to the bed and sat down next to her. It was then I realized she was crying. "Sweetheart," I called out, but she just shook her head. "You want to be pregnant, don't you?" I questioned, and she shrugged. Though she wanted me to believe in her indifference, her eyes never lied to me. She wanted this, too. "Well, then," I trailed off as I flipped the test in her direction. It was on that test that one single solitary word was revealed: pregnant. "How did this happen?" Bella mused after a second, and I couldn't help but chuckle. "Well, you see, Bella, when two people love each other," I trailed off when she smacked my arm. "No, I mean, I'm just wow," she muttered. "We're going to have a baby, well, another baby." This time her face light up as she said it. "I told ya," I gloated. "So you did. How did you know?" she questioned with a twinkle in her eye. "Remember that day we went to the pizza place in North Carolina?" I asked, and she nodded her head. "Well, while I was waiting for you guys to come out, the old man in the rocking chair gave me some advice. When you walked out, and the wind caught your dress, so, for a brief second you looked pregnant. I didn't think anything of it at the time until I woke up from a dream where I saw the same thing. Only it wasn't the wind making your dress flare out, it was the baby." "So, a dream?" She sounded skeptical, but I just nodded back. "You said an old man gave you advice. What did he say?" "Well, I think he could tell I was frustrated, and that I had had a long day, so he told me that no matter what, it would get better because I had my family." I remembered his words so clearly. I reached my hand out for Bella's, and she quickly took it. "I'm sorry you were frustrated. I knew you really liked that one house, but it just wasn't it." She tried to explain, but I put a finger to her lips. "Doesn't matter, because the last house was perfect, and I know just the room to save for this one, ISP. Oak as I reached out my free hand to Bella's stomach. "I'm gonna get fat again," Bella pouted, and I started to laugh. "No, not fat, just pregnant. And you're going to be beautiful, just like you were last time," I assured her. I was barely 20 then. My body could bounce back easier than it could now. She tried to correct me, but I refused to accept it. We continued to talk about the baby, and how the pregnancy would affect the move. Bella would only be roughly 10 or so weeks when we moved, but it solidified the idea that we'd be hiring a moving company to pack and unpack for us. So changed my game plan for my practice because I wanted to be able to take a few weeks off after the birth to stay home and help. I had to admit, I was skeptical when Bella approached me with the idea of waiting to tell Nathan. In truth, I thought he would be happy, but I knew it would come at a price. We would have to step up our commitment to him to ensure he didn't feel replaced. However, Bella pointed out that with excitement and newness could also come tragedy, and she didn't want to explain to Nathan what a miscarriage was if the worst were to happen. The mere mention of that word had my stomach rolling, and I started to silently pray that our baby would be healthy. Of course, I jumped on board for waiting once she pointed out her reasoning. We decided Bella would see someone locally, just for a dating ultrasound to get a steady due date, and then we would find an OB the second we had officially moved. So we'd wait until Bella's second trimester to share the news with Nathan. Several hours passed, and neither one of us could fall back asleep. Bella had gone to bed extremely early, and I was having problem with jet lag, so from about 6 on we just stayed in each other's arms quietly, thinking about the future ahead. I did have to admit that our timing wasn't perfect, but neither was it with Nathan. In fact, Nathan was the epitome of horribly planning, but that didn't make me view him any differently. He was my son who I loved with my whole heart. My only fear was that we wouldn't be able to settle down in time to relax for a little while before Bella got too pregnant. Even though most of our belongings would be packed and unpacked, there was still decorating, furniture shopping, and networking that needed to be done. I made a mental note to ask Bella what she thought about hiring a personal decorator. Even though I was almost positive she wouldn't go for it. We started our day when Nathan woke up around 8. Emmett and Rosalie planned to visit that afternoon, and an evening since it was almost time for them to leave, too. As it stood with Alice and Jasper now gone, Rosalie and Emmett only had about 2 weeks left, and we were leaving 2 weeks after that. Blank. We had just arrived home from the grocery store, and I was putting the groceries away when I heard Bella call me from the laundry room. "Edward?" I walked in to see what was wrong. I found her standing in the center of the room with an awestruck expression. "Did you do this?" She gestured toward the sorted piles of clothes. Yeah, did I do it wrong?" I asked. We'd been so busy since Nathan woke up that I had forgotten all about the clothes I'd sorted the night before. "No, it's just, thank you," she said thoughtfully. I thought I noticed a tear in her eye, and that was when I realized Bella's hormones were already acting up. "You're welcome. Do you need any help?" I asked, but she shook her head no. I walked out of the laundry room to finish putting the unpacked groceries away. Rosalie, Emmett, and Joshua arrived a little after 1. Bella was so busy running around the kitchen that we didn't even hear the doorbell, and, as a result, slipped. About the baby news in front of Rosalie. "Bella, breathe," I whispered into her ear as I walked up behind her. I placed my hand on her stomach and lightly kissed her neck, catching her off guard enough to stop moving. "But, I have to," she started, but I shook my head, no, against her neck. "You need to slow down," I lightly chastised her. "Edward, I'm pregnant, not disabled," she huffed. "Sweetheart, I would never assume something as demeaning as that. But we had a busy week. You've been up since 3 a.m., and pregnant or not, I'd still be telling you to relax," I explained my concern. "You're pregnant?" I heard Rosalie whisper shout, and we both whirled around to see her standing in the kitchen doorway. I started but shut my mouth. "Nathan let us in," she explained, and Bella and I nodded simultaneously. "Is it true?" she asked quietly while looking around to see no one else was listening. Bella nodded her head, and Rosalie smirked. "Does Nathan know?" she asked quietly, but I quickly told her no. She nodded her head and shooed me away for some one-on-one time with Bella. I found Emmett, Nathan, and Joshua in the living room. Joshua had started to crawl, and Nathan was having fun egging him on. While Emmett flipped on a game, I sat down next to him and pretended to watch, but instead focused more on the interactions of my son and nephew. Watching them made me wonder whether Bella and I would be blessed with another son or a daughter. Bella had said she wanted a girl, and though I liked the idea of a daughter, I didn't like the idea of a teenager daughter dating boys, puberty. I visibly shuddered. "You okay, man?" Emmett asked with a raised eyebrow, and I nodded. He didn't push for any more than that, but he also didn't seem to believe me, either. The afternoon turned into the evening, and dinner was served. We all chatted aimlessly about the up-and-coming moves, and Bella filled everyone in on North Carolina while I threw in bits and pieces about the house. Nathan would jump in and explain things that stood out to him, but it all came back to Miss Mary and the chocolate chip cookies every evening. Once we were all finished, and Rosalie and Bella started discussing decorating ideas, Emmett and I excused ourselves to the back patio. "Dad called the other day," he started, and my attention immediately snapped to him. I could tell Emmett had been on edge about something all afternoon, but I had no idea what was bothering him. "Really?" I said for a lack of a better reaction. "Yeah, he mentioned trying to get a hold of you. I thought you deserved a warning," he explained. Thanks," I replied, still taken aback. "Are you going to talk to him?" Emmett asked me as we took a seat on the patio chairs. "I don't know. I know I should, but I don't want to," I answered noncommittally. "Did you agree to see him?" "Yeah, it was brief. Doesn't really change anything, though," he trailed off, and when I looked back at him, I saw his eyes were trained on his own son. Emmett was right in that regard. Dad's words now wouldn't change anything. "I'll think about it," I stated, and he nodded. "So, another baby?" he asked out of the blue. Yeah," I said carefully. "Rosalie told me," he explained, and I realized it wasn't something he saw. If we were too obvious, Nathan would figure it out, and we didn't want that. "Yeah, we found out late last night," I recounted the night before. "So, are you excited? It's happening all over again for you two, huh?" Emmett joked. "Yeah, I mean, we didn't plan it this way, but it's all falling together like puzzle pieces." "I'm thrilled," I stated happily. "Good," he replied. "I'm happy for you. I still don't know how I got so damn lucky," I joked before tipping my beer in his direction. He reached out and clanked the bottle necks together. "Neither do I, little brother." "Neither do I," he chuckled. We sat in silence for a few minutes before the direction of our conversation changed completely. "So, Mom," Emmett broached. "What about her?" My tone turned hard. "I ran into her while I was shopping in Port Angeles. Though, I'm not sure it was accidental, considering I was in a hardware store, and I have no idea why she was there. I said my goodbyes, told her we were moving, but didn't get specific. She gave me her new number and told me to call when we got settled, he recounted the chance meeting. Are you going to call? I asked curiously. Doubtful, but I'll keep it just in case, he answered. Do you plan to talk to her before you leave? Tell her about Bella and moving? He questioned, and I snorted. Definitely not. I mean, I know she's my mother, but I don't feel like any relationship is possible between us. And, really, if I tried it would only hurt Bella, and I can't do that. Hook my head of the mere thought of bringing my mother back into my life. When you're born, you love your parent unconditionally, and they're supposed to feel the same. However, in my case, there was just too much history and too much hurt. So, you're saying you'll never talk to her again because of Bella? He asked, almost in disbelief as we started walking back inside. It was obvious Joshua needed to go home and go to sleep as we watched Rosalie struggle to calm him down. Yeah, I mean, if I had to decide this second, well, I'd always choose Bella. She's everything. I trailed as our eyes locked, and she smiled at me. I'm proud of you, Emmett stated stoically. For what? I asked, surprised by his statement. For picking the right choice this time, he answered and placed his hand on my shoulder. We both shared a nod, and I promised I'd be over to help them box stuff up the next weekend. It wouldn't be the last time we'd see them before they left, but still, time felt like it was running out too quickly. After Emmett and Rosalie left, I helped Bella get Nathan ready for bed. We then worked together to get the kitchen cleaned up so we could relax ourselves. It was there Bella asked me about my conversation with Emmett. What did Emmett want to talk about? Bella asked casually, and I started to consider what I wanted to tell her. I then realized hiding anything wouldn't be a good idea, especially after looking up to see her eyeing me expectantly. He saw our parents recently, I answered. He wanted to know if I had plans to do the same. They were together? Bella asked curiously, though her tone was off. No, my dad called him, and he agreed to meet him. Emmett said he mentioned wanting to see me. Then I guess when E.M. was down in Port Angeles he accidentally bumped into my mom at Lowe's, I explained. How did it go? She pressed for more details. I think it went okay, but Emmett said it didn't change anything. I guess our mom gave him her new number and told him to keep a hold of it. He plans on it, but, at this point, doesn't plan to use it. I told Bella what Emmett had told me. And what about you? Bella whispered. What about me? I asked, confused. Do you plan on talking to her? She asked, and I could hear her sniffling. Bella, are you crying? I panicked as I whirled around and reached for her. Sure enough, a few stray tears had managed to fall from her eyes with more getting ready to fall over the brim. No, she lied. I swear, I hate hormones. I smiled down at her. I may meet with my dad, but I have no intentions of seeing my mom. I answered her previous question, and I watched her visibly relax. You didn't think, I trailed, concerned that she'd believe I'd let anyone, but especially her, come between us. Well, no, but she is your mother, and, Bella tried to explain, but I just shook my head no. Oh, my beautiful, sweet, crazy girl. No one, and I mean no one, is messing us up again. I kissed her lips. Bella, no one will rob me of you. Kiss, I swear to you. Kiss, I love you way too much to dream of going anywhere else. Kiss. When I pulled away, Bella's eyes had turned sultry on me. She moved her arms to around my neck and pulled up to start kissing me on her own accord. I was concerned she'd be tired, but, apparently, I was wrong. That night we went to bed together, and I slowly showed Bella exactly how much she owned my whole heart. 3 days had passed since Emmett and Rosalie came over, and we were now on our way to Charlie's for dinner. He called Bella the day after we got home to arrange a time we could visit. He wanted to hear more about North Carolina, but he also wanted to introduce Bella to Karen. Of course, that caused Bella to be a nervous wreck the entire time, and we went back and forth on whether we were going to tell him about the baby or not. I had put a call into an old colleague who was more than willing to see Bella after hours. The plan was to have dinner at Charlie's, meet Karen, and then leave Nathan for an hour or so while we ran to the hospital. Charlie knew about the babysitting, but Bella had been evasive as to why. When we pulled into the driveway, I noticed a white Ford Focus already parked on the street, and I assumed that was Karen's car. Bella tensed when it came into view, but I grabbed her hand and soothed her knuckled with my fingers. I parked and helped Bella unload all of the stuff she brought. Apparently, Charlie told Bella that Karen offered to cook, but Bella absolutely refused. I could already see the rift that was beginning to form, and felt like I needed to step in. Bella, it was a nice gesture, I suggested after she fumed to me for an hour about Karen taking her place. So, you're on her side now, Edward? She snapped at me, but I just looked at her dumbfounded. No, I am, and will always be, Team Bella. However, it was nice of her to offer, and I'm sure she won't be offended by you cooking. You need to relax, baby. Remember, Charlie is an adult, and we have to let him be happy, I reminded. Couldn't he have started dating after, I don't know, we moved? And I didn't have to worry about it? She pouted, and I laughed. You are so sleeping on the couch tonight, she threatened, but I knew better. Bella, I deadpanned. Okay, no couch, and I know, but he's my dad, it's weird. She tried to explain. I love you. I kissed her forehead. That night she promised she'd try and be nice. Before I had a chance to knock, the door flew open to a flustered Charlie. Great, I didn't even want to know why his face was all red or why his forehead was broken out in sweat. Bella was not going to miss this. Come in, sorry, I was running late from the station and just got home. Charlie tried to explain, but I raised an eyebrow at him behind Bella's back. If looks could kill, I'd be dead, but I just shook my head. I sure as heck was not ABO. To explain to Bella what I assumed was happening before we got here. When a woman, who I presumed was Karen, walked out of the bathroom to greet us, I had my answer. Bella, this is Karen, Charlie. He introduced as he gestured between the women. Karen, this is my daughter, Bella. My grandson, Nathan, and what are you again, Edward? Hi, I'm Nathan's dad, and Bella's boyfriend. I introduced myself and raised my hand. It's nice to meet you, she said. Before escaping into the kitchen, Bella put on a smile and said hello. Did I do something? Karen asked self-consciously. No, she's just adjusting. I tried to excuse Bella's cold behavior. I understand, she replied and looked up to Charlie, who smiled. He then walked into the kitchen to talk to Bella while I set Nathan up in the living room. We let Nathan pack a bag of toys and activities after we told him that we had another boring meeting to go to after dinner. Karen came down to sit, but she didn't interact for a long while. She simply stared at Nathan as he used his tag reader to work on a new book he was reading. It took all I had not to interrupt Bella and Charlie, but I decided it was best if I stayed out of it. Karen eventually asked Nathan about the book he was reading and moved to sit next to him as he sounded out words and phrases he hadn't seen before. Do you have children? I asked curiously. Yes, but she's no longer with us. Karen answered quietly, and I immediately apologized, though I jumped when I heard Bella behind me. I'm sorry, that must be very difficult, Bella said sympathetically. When I looked up, I could see the sincerity behind her statement was real. Thank you, Karen replied, and Bella announced it was time to eat. Dinner was a little more than awkward as we all ate in silence. Bella made lasagna, garlic bread, and a salad. It was delicious, but the tension in the room could be cut with a spork. A plastic, deformed spork. This is great, Bella. You'll have to share your recipe, Karen complimented sweetly, and I immediately held my breath. Every warning sign in my head sounded, but I was helpless to stop the impending disaster. Why? Bella snapped. I just thought I'd make it sometime. I've never made lasagna before, she answered warily. Well, don't start now, you can't have my recipe. The sound of her fork clashing on the plate echoed off the walls as Bella abruptly stood up and rushed upstairs to her old room. I sighed and put my fork down. Dad, is Mom okay? Nathan asked worried. She's fine, buddy. She's just a little emotional these days, I replied. And Charlie's head snapped to me. Does she have her period? Nathan asked without missing a beat, and I choked on my water. Charlie spit pasta from his mouth, and Karen laughed. How do you know about that? I asked after the shock wore off. Nathan shrugged. Mom told me years ago. She said it was why she'd cry a few days out of the month. He answered like it was the most basic question ever. Yes, Nathan, just like that, I finally answered. He nodded and went back to eating. However, that didn't stop Charlie from continuing to glare at me. I simply raised an eyebrow to challenge to him, but he made no move to speak. Karen quickly picked up on our exchange and her mouth formed a small O shape. I started to get up, but she stood and volunteered herself first. After several minutes passed, and she hadn't come tumbling down the stairs, I assumed she was talking to Bella, and things were going okay. Charlie didn't press on the question he had, and I checked my watch a few times. to ensure we'd still be on schedule for the doctor. To say I was shocked when 20 minutes later both women came down the stairs laughing and smiling would have been an understatement. "Are we late?" Bella asked, and I told her not if we left at that moment. So we said our goodbye and told Nathan we'd be back in about an hour. Blank, underscore, blank. "So, things are better?" I asked as I started driving to the hospital. "Yeah, we came to an understanding." Bella breathed deeply. "Really?" I asked, shocked. "Yeah, I mean I don't know. She really loves my dad," Bella explained. "I don't know why I'm freaking out about this. I know you're right, and he has a right to be happy. It's just so much is changing, and he was like, my one unchanging constant, and then, he changed, too. It made me feel out of control, but she's not all that bad. I know she's quite a bit younger, but she really loves him, so I'm okay with that." "Bella, why didn't you tell me you felt out of control?" I pushed gently. "I don't know. I'm not even sure I realized that's how I was feeling until tonight. I love the changes we're going through, and I love you so much, but it was all so quick. It's just taken time to get used to, and acting like a spoiled teenager isn't going to help," she replied. "I'm proud of you, Bella," I announced, and she smiled. We were pulling into the hospital parking lot minutes later, and we used a back entrance to go up to the OB floor. Dr. Kimberly Hornself was waiting for us in her office when we knocked. She immediately smiled and ushered us in. "Wow, Edward, you look good, happy almost," Kimberly commented as we took a seat. "Thanks, I owe it all to her, though," I said as I tilted my head towards Bella. "Ah, the mysterious Bella. It's nice to finally meet you," she commented warmly. "Edward, you were worried about your dad, and I've been told he's gone home for the day, but we'll still keep this visit sealed tight. Now, Bella, I have a little paperwork for you to fill out. Don't worry about name and date. I just need your medical history, last missed period, and the like." She handed Bella a clipboard. While Bella was writing, Kimberly excused herself to get an exam room ready. The OB/GYN floor had portable ultrasound machines, and we'd need to use one for dating. "Do you remember the last time we did this?" Bella asked offhandedly. Did I remember? How could I forget? We were both so nervous, and neither one of us had a clue what we were doing. I definitely felt more confident this go around. Kimberly came back and got us a few minutes later. We moved to the exam room where Bella undressed from the bottoms down and climbed up onto the bed. "Now Bella, you're still early, so I have no clue how much we'll see, okay?" Kimberly warned, but we already knew the risk of such an early ultrasound. Even with the sheet covering Bella's naked legs, she was still uncomfortable as the ultrasound probe entered her body in search of her cervix. I held her hand as I patiently waited at the side of her bed. I was seated down far enough to see the turn screen, while Bella was blinded by her angle. I squeezed her hand to let her know Kimberly had found the baby. She made me promise to, so she knew not to panic. I looked up, and she smiled. Kimberly began moving the probe to get the best picture and turned the screen so Bella could see. "Meet the newest baby Cullen," Kimberly announced, and Bella gasped as our little baby came into view. A strong heartbeat could already be seen beating away furiously in the middle of its body. "Wow," Bella whispered with tears in her eyes. "It looks like your due date is right on with what I'm seeing, Bella." "I estimate your due date to be March 10th, Kimberly explained as she removed the probe from Bella and allowed her to sit up. "Now, the standard with someone with your history is your first OB appointment around 12 weeks. I know you'll have moved by then, so I suggest lining someone up soon to ensure you get an appointment quickly. I'll print an extra picture for you to bring with you, but everything looks great. With the baby having such a strong heartbeat already, that is a really positive sign. It stayed in the 160s the entire time. Of course, any bleeding, concerns, or something just doesn't feel right, please call. We'll see you if you're still local," Kimberly informed us. "Thank you," I replied as she handed over 3 ultrasound pictures for us, and an extra for the next doctor. "Anytime, Edward. If I don't see you before your move, good luck." She smiled as she CUSED herself so Bella could get cleaned up. Of course, Bella kept peeking at the pictures as we walked through the hallway back towards our car. At that point, nothing could bring us down from our high. Of course, that was until I opened the back entrance to see my dad standing there waiting to ambush us. Blank, underscore, blank. "Edward, this door is for employees only," my dad stated evenly. And I felt Bella tense next to me. "It's nice to see you again, Bella." I believe congratulations are in order, he announced with a hard glare towards me. Thank you, Bella answered politely. Bella, go to the car, please. I pushed and handed her my key. She looked up at me, but I urged her with my eyes to just listen. She nodded and walked past my dad towards the car. I figured you two would end up together, he commented. What do you want? I asked, irritated. I want to know why you're sneaking into my hospital, using my staff at your own disposal without even the courtesy of letting me know, he snapped back. I planned on calling. Emmett gave me your message, I rebutted. Yeah, when? After you moved to where are you going again? Oh right, North Carolina, he trailed off, clearly annoyed. I got you a job at one of the top hospitals in the country, and you have the nerve to not only turn it down, but embarrass me in the process. Again, what do you want? I asked for a final time. Was I really that bad of a father you felt the need to embarrass me in my own hospital? He asked, and I couldn't tell if he wanted a serious answer or not. Look, I don't have time for this. Bella is waiting for me. We need to pick up Nathan, and I'm not sure what you want from me. I may not have been perfect, but, to answer your question, no, you weren't good enough. You gave up on me. Hell, you gave up on all of us, and I don't care what your excuses are. I appreciated that you thought of me, but if you knew me at all you'd know I hated working in a hospital. I told you about how I dreamed of opening my own practice, so I'm not sure why that would shock you. However, as far as I'm concerned, you don't exist. I'm moving away, and I'm moving on, I explained with a shrug. So, that's it? He asks as I walked past him. Yeah, Dad, that's it, I stated before turning back around and walking away. When I got to the car, I was relieved that Bella had done exactly what I asked and waited in the car patiently. Bella didn't ask any questions, but instead just offered her hand. How holding her hand could bring me so much comfort I would never know, but I also knew we'd have to wait until after Nathan was asleep to talk. When we arrived back to Charlie's house, we were a bit surprised that Nathan had passed out on Charlie's couch. We can keep him, Charlie offered, but we weren't so convinced. Nathan had a bad reaction to waking up without us in the hotel, and we didn't want that again. Bella explained that to Charlie, and he understood. Before you get him, Charlie started. Do you two have anything you'd like to tell me? His mustache twitched. Yeah, Bella said as she pulled out the ultrasound pictures. Meet your new grandchild. Charlie looked down and blinked a few times. That's a baby? He asked in question. Yeah, a very new baby, and we're not telling Nathan yet, so please keep it quiet, Bella explained. I guess congratulations are in order, Charlie announced. And Karen joined in on the sentiment. I'm just gonna clean up Nathan's bag first. Can you carry him to the car? Bella asked, and I said yes. When she walked into the living room, Charlie turned to me before I had a chance to follow. Again? Was all he said. Yes, sir, I answered, uncomfortably. You going to do this the right way this time, Edward? He asked with an eyebrow raised. Yes, I nodded my head. Then do you have anything you'd like to ask me? He pushed. I shrugged my shoulders with a laugh. I'm going to do it with or without your permission, I shrugged off. To my surprise, Charlie started laughing. Yeah, you finally grew up. You keep her happy. She's definitely happier. He trailed off as I walked in to get Nathan. Bella tilted her head in question, but I shook my head telling her not to push. Getting Nathan in and out of the car was a little tiring, but once we got him tucked in bed we were finally able to relax. Bella was curled up on my chest with her eyes focused on one of the ultrasound pictures. You're really excited, huh? I joked, and it broke her concentration enough to look up at me. Yeah, I really am. Are you? She asked cautiously. So much, I assured her. Good, because I don't want to do this again by myself, she said sadly. You'll never be alone again, I whispered into her hair. I know, she replied. So, what did your dad want? It looked heated. Quote, he was angry that I was tiptoeing around his back, and angry I didn't take the job in Denver, I answered simply. He said I was an embarrassment and wanted to know if he had been such a bad father to deserve my treatment of him. What did you say? She asked curiously. That my place was with you, and that didn't include Denver. That I had always wanted my own practice, and that yes. He really was that bad, I explained. As we laid there, Bella didn't comment any further. I rubbed my arm up and down her back, and I could see her eyes begin to flutter. I moved the picture to the nightstand, and I watched her eyes open and shut several times before deciding to stay closed. I love you, I whispered. Love you, Bella yawned. Edward, You're a good father. I went to bed with a smile on my face that night. Blank, underscore, blank. A few days later, I spent every waking second helping Emmett box up his belongings, while Rosalie and Joshua hung out with Bella and Nathan. Even though Emmett had hired a company to take care of the big stuff in the boxes, he felt like he should pack his own valuables to ensure it was done right. Of course, by day 3 he was rethinking his philosophy. Fuck, why did I agree to this? He huffed and I couldn't help but laugh. You laugh, but it's almost your turn. Nope, I said proudly. I'm hiring someone to do it all. Bella shouldn't be packing and unpacking, and with the limited time, I just decided to hire it all out. Fuck you. Emmett flicked me off, and I rolled my eyes. Speaking of moving, what are you doing with Bella's house? Keeping it. It's paid for, and we'll use it when we visit, I answered. Smart plan, he agreed. So, I ran into Dad, or well, he ambushed me. I started to explain the confrontation. Emmett sat and listened but didn't provide commentary until I was done. I have nothing nice to say about that man right now. I'm sorry Bella had to see that, but everything is okay with the baby? He asked. Yeah, everything is perfect so far. Bella's hormones are out of whack big time, though. I mean, they were last time too, but not this early or this street. Wrong, I swear I've wiped more tears away this past week than I did her entire last trimester with Nathan, I explained. Maybe it's a girl, he suggested. I hope so. Bella really wants a girl, I mused. We got up from our break after that, and approximately 12 hours, and 100 boxes later, we were done. The movers would take care of the rest. Blank, underscore, blank. A week later, we stood in our driveway giving our final goodbyes to Rosalie, Emmett, and Joshua. I'm going to miss you, Rosalie whispered into Bella's ear the morning they were leaving for the airport. Though we had dinner the night before, Bella made them swear she'd get to see Joshua one more time. Of course, he was asleep in his car seat, but Bella didn't care. Emmett and I shared a hug before we watched them drive away that morning. Bella turned to me and used my chest to cry on. We'll visit, I promise, I tried to reassure her. I know. It's just hard to say goodbye, she said sadly. Come on, sweetheart, let's go make some breakfast, I suggested and she nodded. Now that we only had 2 weeks left in Forks, our time was becoming even more scheduled. Phone calls were incoming daily. Plans for the moving company to come in and pack, figuring out what to do with our vehicles, and ensuring Charlie had all the necessary paperwork to take care of Bella's house in case something happened while we were away. And I was putting the groceries away. It was all physically and mentally exhausting. Plus, Bella had already started placing several phone calls into the hospitals and clinics in the Raleigh area. Edward, I have a question, and I want you to seriously think about your answer before you say anything, okay? She asked as she scrambled eggs. Sure, I answered. Would you be okay with me just finding a midwife instead of an actual doctor? She questioned. Yeah, I don't see why not. You can see a midwife, but only a doctor would be allowed to deliver you, I pointed out. About that, you know I've been calling all week, and I'm just not happy with what the hospitals have to offer. I was referred to a midwife that does home births, and I was curious what your take on that would be. Bella asked so diplomatically that it took me a second to register her request. Of course, when I did, I literally dropped the fork I was washing, causing it to clank around in the sink. I turned around to see Bella looking a little startled. It was then I realized she was serious. You're not kidding, are you? I asked, and she shook her head no. Is that what you want? I asked dumbfounded. Yeah, I mean, she's certified and comes highly recommended. She used to work as a labor and delivery nurse before deciding to leave the hospital environment. I don't plan on using medicine again, and I'd be more comfortable at home. Plus, we wouldn't have to arrange childcare for Nathan, and you'd be here to make sure the baby is okay, she said nonchalantly. If there is an emergency? I asked. We're close enough to a hospital that I could be seen if needed, she answered. Of course, if any complications arose, I'd agree to go in without a second thought. Well, I'd like to meet her first, but if this is really what you want, then I'll support you. Once the baby is born, I'll make sure I have everything I need to ensure I can make sure the baby is okay, I replied. Thank you, I thought you'd freak, she said excitedly as she gave me a hug. Don't you know by now I'd do anything to make you happy? I smirked, and she rolled her eyes. Blank, underscore, blank. 1 week before our final move, I had finally decided I was done waiting. I had been battling myself ever since Bella and I started dating, and with the surprising news of the baby, I felt like I was trapped. First, it was too soon, then it turned to too late. I wanted Bella to know my decision had nothing to do with the baby I would be asking, regardless. So I arranged for Nathan and M. East to drive to Port Angeles for an afternoon while Bella spent some time with Charlie. I kissed her goodbye as she walked out the door, and then loaded Nathan in the car a few minutes later. On the drive up there, I realized talking to Nathan about asking Bella to marry me was going to be harder than I thought. I wasn't sure if I should be casual or serious. He was 8. So, are you getting excited? I asked Nathan once we got on the long stretch of highway separating Forks and Port Angeles. Yeah, Mom gave me a book to look through for my room. I can't decide if I want baseball or soccer room, he answered. What about a sports theme? You could put all the sports together, and then not have to just pick one, I suggested. That's a good idea, he agreed. So, Nate, I'm not sure how to say this. So I'm just going to come out with it, okay? I started, and I heard him chuckle at me. Nathan, what would you think about me asking your mom to marry me? He sat quietly in the backseat, and I did everything I could to avoid staring him down in the rear review mirror. Do you mean like be together forever? He asked for clarification. Yes, we'd have a wedding, and promise before God that we would be together for the rest of our lives. I broke down my thoughts to his level. Okay, he stated simply, and I blanched. That was it? Do you have any questions? I asked. Nathan sat and thought for a second before asking when we'd get married. I told him we'd have to decide that later, but first I wanted help picking out a ring, and then I had to ask. I warned him that Bella could say no, but he rolled his eyes at that comment. When we arrived at the jewelry store, it took us over an hour to finally find the perfect ring. Nathan actually spotted it first, and he exclaimed that it was perfect. I was currently holding a ring Nathan had deemed too big, but when I saw the ring he was pointing to, I was instantly in love. It was platinum with a half-carat princess-cut diamond with specks of pink diamonds on the side. It wasn't bulky or flashy, instead, it was feminine and beautiful. Just like Bella, I paid for the ring, treated Nathan to ice cream, and began our trek home. He asked when I planned on asking, but I told him I wasn't sure it would be a secret he may have to keep for a few days. He didn't seem to mind, and I just hoped I'd find the perfect moment to ask. Blank. This is so much easier than what Emmett did, I commented to Bella as I watched the last of our belongings get loaded up into the truck. I waited for the containers to be sealed so I could sign off on the papers and survey the overall house. We opted to keep most of the furniture at the house in Forks for when we visited, and decided we'd do a large furniture purchase when we arrived in North Carolina. Until we had stuff arrive, I offered to book the Hilton again. Nathan was on board, of course, but Bella rolled her eyes without giving me a solid answer. I assumed one night on an air mattress, and we'd have a room, so I didn't push. Tonight was our last night at Bella's house. We'd be staying with Charlie on our last night so we could get the house clean and locked away without having to worry about it early the next morning. We also decided to keep Bella's car at the house, and instead of getting rid of mine, since it was newer, we had it shipped. As soon as we got to North Carolina, we would buy Bella a car that suited her needs as a soon-to-be mom of 2. Charlie planned on taking Nathan out early the next morning to fish while we sealed up the house. So, instead of having him sit at the house while the moving company worked, he was actually having a 2-day sleepover with his papa. It gave Bella and I a break from constantly making sure he was entertained, and allowed us to focus on the movers. When the guy brought me the paperwork to sign, I was more than happy to get it done with. He gave us our copy that I'd stash away in our moving binder, something Bella put together, and then they were on their way. How tired are you? I asked Bella, and she shrugged. What do you think about a date night out for dinner? It may be our last opportunity for a while, I suggested. Sure, I just need to shower first, she answered, and we both went inside to shower, change clothes, and get ready. The drive out to Port Angeles was spent in a comfortable silence. I caught Bella resting her eyes a few times, but she was wide awake when I parked at our favorite Italian restaurant. We were seated quickly and ordered immediately. Are you nervous? I asked. Yeah, everything is going so well, I'm kinda waiting for something bad to happen. But I'm excited, too, she answered. What about you? I'm anxious. I feel like I've done as much as I can from here that I'm ready to get there and start putting plans into motion. I had finalized the blueprints I wanted to use for my office, and now I needed to hire a construction crew. I could have started that over the phone, but I wanted those meetings to be face-to-face. "Are you sure you don't have any input for the house?" she asked, and I shrugged. "Whatever you want to do is fine, as long as our room isn't too girly. And I know it won't be. I just want it to feel like a home, and I've seen you do that. So I trust you," I rattled on as our food arrived. We casually chatted about North Carolina, and what we had planned for tomorrow. At one point, while Bella talked, I was caught staring at her. "What, do I have something on my face?" she asked concerned. "No, it's just, well, you're beautiful," I complimented. She smiled and rolled her eyes. Our conversation continued back up, but I wasn't kidding, she was beautiful. When we got back to Forks, we opted to call it a night early and snuggle in each other's arms. Blank, _ blank. "You guys okay?" Charlie asked amused when we walked into his house looking like we'd been drowned, attacked by a wild animal, and thrown back into the water. When Bella said she was waiting for something bad to happen, I think she jinxed us. First, we found 2 boxes that were supposed to be on the moving truck that didn't make it. So I hauled them off to the post office and mailed them to our realtor after calling and asking for permission. Caitlin assured us it wouldn't be the first time, but still. Then, when I went to shut off the water pipes, to ensure they wouldn't freeze once it got cold, one decided to burst and flood the kitchen. Bella was screaming, while I worked furiously to get the pump to shut off. When it finally did, the amount of water in the kitchen was heart attack inducing. More than once I found Bella sitting on her knees sobbing in a pile of water. Each time I soothed her until she calmed down, helped her clean up, was shooed away to do something else, and repeat. It went on for hours. By the time the kitchen was finally cleaned and dried, the day was gone. We walked into Charlie's house looking horrible, and even Nathan had wide eyes. We excused ourselves to clean up before dinner, which turned out to be Charlie ordering pizza. Of course, once the food arrived and we had time to decompress, both of our moods started to lighten. Nathan was exhausted from fishing, so I was relieved when he decided to crash out early. Charlie asked us a zillion times if we had everything we needed. And over again we assured him we were set. At 9:15, I asked Charlie if he minded keeping an eye on Nathan, and he gave me an odd look but agreed. I asked Bella if we could take a walk, and I was given an equally weird look, but she accepted. The air was warm with a slight breeze. The ground was dry, and the street lights kept the area lit enough for us to stroll leisurely around. When we made it to the park about a block from Charlie's house, I pulled her over so we could sit on one of the benches. "I'm so ready for tomorrow to be here," I commented aloud. "I know, I'm definitely ready to leave," she agreed. "Forks has a lot of memories," I mused. "Yeah, it does. Some really good things happened here, but also some really terrible moments too," she said wistfully. "Today was hell," I sighed. And Bella agreed. "I don't want to leave Forks on such a bad note though," I said out loud and turned to face Bella. "Edward, I am not having sex in a public park," she deadpanned. And I almost fell off the bench laughing. When I could finally pry my hand from my side long enough to breathe, I sat back up. "Bella, I love you so freaking much." I kept laughing, and she pouted. It took several minutes before I finally let that comment wear off. "So, you don't want to leave on a bad note. What did you have in mind?" Bella asked, obviously clueless to the ring in my pocket. "I wanted to ask you a question," I answered evasively. "Okay," she drew out the word. "Bella, when we leave this town tomorrow, I don't want to land in North Carolina without the final piece of our puzzle completed. You are, without a doubt, my best friend, the greatest mother in the world to both of our children." I spoke as I raised one hand to her stomach for a brief second. "And you are my everything. Will you allow me to leave Forks on the greatest high of my life and accept this ring?" I went down to one knee and pulled the little black box out of my pants pocket. When I opened it, I heard Bella gasp before she burst into tears. Through some fumbling and shaking hands I was able to place it on her finger. "Yes," she whispered. "A million times, yes. I love you," I replied back as I held her body close to mine. "I love you, too," she answered. We stayed in the park for a while longer as Bella gushed over how perfect her ring was. She asked about Nathan, but I admitted to bringing him along, and that he had given his permission. When we got back to Charlie's, he eyed Bella's ring, said a quick congratulations, and left us alone to sleep. The next morning came too fast, and from waking up to sitting on the plane, the time passed in a blur. Nathan spotted the ring the second he woke up and cheered over that. Charlie drove us to Seattle, and unlike the first time, security was hell. And people were rude. However, nothing could wipe the smile off my face. Bella had agreed to marry me. I truly had everything I wanted now. Once we were in the air, and on our way to our new life. Nathan passed out while listening to a movie, and Bella handed me the list Nathan had given her. She asked him for a wish list of things he'd like for the house in North Carolina. Nathan's list: 1. Sports room, soccer, baseball, and hockey. 2. Bike. 3. Diving board for the pool. 4. A pinball machine. 5. A brother. 6. A television in my bedroom. My eyes stopped as I reread number 5. I looked up at Bella, who just smiled. Well, buddy, I thought. Be careful what you wish for. What are you thinking about? I whispered into Bella's hair as I watched her stare off into space. The last 3 months had been a hectic blur of signing paperwork, moving in, furniture shopping, car shopping, painting, organizing, and planning, on top of everything I was doing on the side to get my own office up and running. In the past few weeks, Bella had taken to writing in her notebook several times a day, and though I knew these phases didn't tend to last long, this was the first night in 4 days she'd come to bed with me. And I missed her. When do you want to get married? Bella blurted out, and for a second I was knocked back. On our last night in Forks, she had said yes to the most important question I had ever asked her, but once we got to North Carolina it seems to continually be put on the back burner. The truth was I hadn't had time to think about it. I don't know, baby. Have you been thinking about it? I wondered. This was the first time she'd brought it up since the move, and, as much as I wanted to be married tomorrow, I couldn't imagine piling on wedding planning right now. We had just finished the house, and tomorrow we'd be having our ultrasound to see if Bella was carrying a boy or a girl. This meant after tomorrow we'd be able to begin planning the newers. Or just another project to add to the list of things we already needed to do. The house was wonderful and truly perfect for us, but it was no small task getting it put together. Though Bella never agreed to hire a personal decorator, after 2 weeks of trying to do everything herself, she started hiring teams of people to help. First, she had a crew come in and paint the entire house. Every room was different, and that alone threw our lives into a tailspin for nearly a month. After that, she hired a crew to come in and put the decor on the walls. Every room was filled with wall sayings and collage picture frames. The furniture was delivered the next week, and then it all came down to finishing touches. Or so she told me. The truth was I thought everything she did was perfect. Every room was warm and friendly, and for the first time, I felt like I owned a home. It wasn't my first place, or even my first house, but it was definitely my first home. Though it was an obvious choice, RB. Room had to be my favorite room, she did. The walls were painted sky blue with brown trimming. We'd chosen a dark oak for our bedroom furniture, and above the headboard was a 10 by 13 of our newest family picture. Bella kept the balcony off of our bedroom simple with lots of whites and soft blues, and, when times allowed, we'd both curl up together on the freestanding hammock she ordered. As her belly got bigger, she confessed that the hammock was one of the most comfortable places to relax because it fully supported her back, so I knew we'd have many more nights to come out relaxing together under the stars. Poor Nathan felt like he was living in a demolition zone for a while, and on a few occasions begged me to make school start sooner in the first month we were there. Of course, I laughed at that, and I would let him tag along with me during the day when my schedule allowed. I was furiously working to ensure the building was being built to code, studying for the test to certify myself in North Carolina, filling out paperwork for permits, and on and on. Some days I swore it would never end, but I was finally reaching a point where I could slow down a little and enjoy little time as a family of 3 we had left, and, now that school had officially started, we were limited to evenings and weekends for family time. Bella was going to be 22 weeks tomorrow, which left us roughly 18 weeks of peace. I was greatly looking forward to being a father again, but I remembered what it was like when Nathan was still a baby. Every night Bella and I prayed our new little one would not have colic if nothing else went our way, no colic. After being here about 2 weeks, Bella met with her midwife Rhonda Calgary, and instantly fell in love with her. I was still a little reserved when I met her, but once I was able to check out her background and references my nerves eased up a little. The final decision was made that Rhonda would take care of all Bella's prenatal visit and deliver the baby in our home. Bella would see an OB to run all the blood work we wanted done and for an anatomy ultrasound. Of course, we were so excited about having another bi that we squeezed in an ultrasound at 17 weeks just to have the baby refuse to cooperate. The baby measured right on target and was completely healthy, but we left without knowing whether it was a girl or a boy. So, Bella booked an appointment at a 3D ultrasound clinic, and we silently prayed we'd find out. "Edward, you still want to get married, right?" Bella asked with a fear-stricken look on her face. "Of course, baby. Why would you think I didn't?" I replied, shocked she'd say such a thing. "I mentioned a wedding, and you went off into space." Her voice eased up a bit, and I leaned down to kiss her forehead. "Sorry, I was just thinking about the last few months, and how hectic they've been. I want to get married, and, frankly, I'd prefer to get married before this baby arrives. But I don't know how in the world we'd plan it this quickly," I explained. "Well, I was thinking about that, and I want to get married soon, too. So I was wondering what you thought of a destination wedding." She broached. Don't you have to book those types of wedding far in advance?" I wondered out loud. "Normally I think you do, but after I called a few places I found one that we could book over the week of Halloween. We'd have to pull Nathan out of school for a few days, but I told them I'd call back tomorrow if we were interested," she informed me. "Where is it?" I asked, because frankly, that sounded perfect if it would make her happy. I had already had an extravagant church wedding once and really didn't want another repeat of that. If this would be enough for Bella, then it was fine by me. "At the Atlantis in the Bahamas," she started, but I tried to cut her off. She continued. "Look, I know what you're going to say. It's a long plane ride, and you'd be worried about me and the baby, but we'll be fine. And the weather is still nice in October, and I can book a package that involves almost no real planning on my part. We all have passports, and I was going to ask you if we could just fly down our families." "Sweetheart, I was just going to say that sounded perfect. If this is what you want, then you just tell me what you need me to do." I assured her that I was behind this plan 100%. "Really?" She looked up sweetly at me, and I just nodded. "God, I love you. I love you, too. Are you tired?" I asked, but she shook her head no. "I'm hoping the baby cooperates tomorrow," she mused. "I hope so, too. Would you like me to give him or her a stern lecture?" I joked, and she laughed. "How did we ever get so lucky?" she said wistfully, but I had to correct her. "I think you mean how did I ever get so lucky? You've always been perfect, and we lucked out with Nathan." Bella smiled up at me, and I couldn't resist kissing her lips any longer. She started to inch up so our faces were closer, and then I felt her reach for the waist of my sleep pants. "Baby, we don't have to if," I placed my hand on her belly. Though Bella and I were still able to fit in time for ourselves at night. Her belly had recently popped, and it made things uncomfortable at times. With neither one of us having experience with sex during a pregnancy, there was a lot of fumbling and changing positions along the way. We found the easiest position was for Bella to get on her hands and knees, but we both missed the intimacy that position lacked. It was all fine and well for quickies, but there were some nights I wanted to lavish my affections on her, and it just wasn't the same. That was how we figured out that Bella could lay down on her side, while I moved from behind. I could still partially see her face, and it gave me access to her neck and shoulder area. Her breasts had grown too tender for me to play with during sex, and as much as I missed them, I didn't miss the expression of sheer pain it caused the first time we realized I could no longer touch them. "You have never, ever turned me down before, Edward. Please don't start now," Bella pleaded as her lips crushed back into mine. I pulled away long enough to say, "Yes, ma'am," before returning my lips to her mouth and trailing my hands down to remove her panties. Blank. "So, you find out today if I'm having a brother or a sister?" Nathan asked over breakfast, and Bella nodded. "Like, for real this time, or are you going to tell me the baby refused to show you, like last time?" "Nathan, now that the baby is bigger it'll be harder to hide, but there is still a small chance we won't be able to find out. However, we hope we do," I tried to explain, but he just shrugged. "Are you still going to get me early?" he asked. "Yes, if we find out. If we don't then you're staying in class. If we do, then we'll pick you up before lunch, go into town for La Rancherita, and then to the baby store so you can help us pick out a few things," Bella informed him. If I never ate at La Rancherita again after Bella had the baby it would be too soon, but she craved it, and Nathan loved it, so we went often. Cool, Nathan replied before putting his bowl in the sink. When he walked over to Bella, knelt before her belly, and explained that he really wanted nachos for lunch so he better behave. I almost died laughing. Once Bella was 12 weeks, we sat Nathan down to tell him the news. From the first second, he was absolutely convinced he was getting a brother. He picked out a name, lessons he was going to teach him, and even offered to clear out half of his room to move a crib in. Of course, no matter how many times we explained that it was still a 50-50 shot having a boy or a girl, he simply waved us off and said he had brotherly instincts. Bella secretly admitted to me one night that she was praying Nathan was wrong, even though she felt guilty that it would crush him. I assured her he would get over it regardless, and that we could always have a third down the road. She rolled her eyes but agreed that we weren't ready to cut out that option yet. Once Nathan was dropped off at school, we headed into Raleigh for our appointment. I specifically took the longer route so I could drive by the office property so Bella could see it from the car. She was amazed at how fast they were building it, and wondered when I thought I'd be able to open. With Bella due in March, the truth was I was looking at June for the opening time frame. I knew once the holidays hit, our lives would be crazy. Then the new baby, and with setting up agreements with insurance companies, hiring and training a new staff, furnishing and organizing, it was no small task to start an office from scratch. The average doctor who starts his own practice uses an existing building to move into and can generally open the doors pretty quickly. Of course, I went about it the harder way, but in return, I got exactly what I wanted. It was an even trade, and with the interest from my trust, plus Bella's commission coming in monthly, we were in no short supply of money. The drive was nice, and traffic wasn't too brutal. I could tell Bella was nervous as I watched her leg constantly shake in the waiting room, but I just held her hand and stayed quietly supportive. We were called back about 10 minutes later, and I helped Bella get situated on the bed. "Hi, I'm Haley, and I'll be your tech today." A middle-aged woman walked in and introduced herself. "Now, I see you requested package D, correct?" "Yes, please," Bella said quietly, and the lady smiled. "Okay, and were you finding out gender, or do you already know?" she asked. "We'd like to find out," I spoke up. "All right, let's see what we can find." "Bella, you're going to feel warm jelly on your belly," she explained as she squeezed a glob of ultrasound transmission gel onto Bella's stomach. Haley used the wand to find the baby, and within seconds a clear picture could be seen on the screen. I had seen 3D images before, but nothing compared to seeing one when it's your own child. When we were having Nathan, this technology wasn't quite as accessible. And outside of the standard ultrasounds, those were the only pictures we had. "Here is your baby," Haley explained as the monitor showed a front view of the baby's face and body. I could already see features from Bella in the face, but it looked like he or she was sleeping. "Now, let's see. Bella, your baby is down low, so you're going to feel some pressure," Haley told Bella as I felt her brace my hand. "Ah, there we go. This one is a tricky little baby," Haley joked. The second I looked up I saw it 3 lines. "Girl," I announced, and both women snapped their attention to me. "That was fast, and you're right," Haley said shocked. "I take it this isn't your first baby?" "Our second. We have a son, but I'm a doctor," I explained, and she gave me an aha face. "Radiologist?" she asked. "Pediatrician," I corrected, and she nodded. "Lucky baby," the tech mused as I turned my attention to Bella, who was positively beaming. "Nathan is going to be crushed," Bella commented. "I know, but hopefully going out to eat will soften the blow. Or, at least, I hoped." 30 minutes later, we were on our way to Chatham Elementary School to pick up Nath. And with 20 printouts and a 30-minute video to share. Blank. Before Nathan was through the office door, he fired the gender question at us, but we refused to answer. He whined, pouted, and pleaded, but we refused to spill until we were seated at La Rancherita. Bella and I had gone out and bought 2 sets of presents for Nathan to open today. Both were tucked safely in the car before we left the house, but only one made it into the restaurant. Each gift bag contained a rattle, bib, bodysuit, matching shirt, and an action figure. Each bag was green, but inside one was all pink, while the other was blue. Nathan would know as soon as he spotted the contents whether he was getting a brother or a sister. The bib and bodysuit read, "Lucky to have my big B. Rother," and the matching shirt Nathan said, "Big brother to a little XXX." Bella ordered one for both genders and decided she would donate the one we couldn't use. Okay, now? Nathan asked forcefully, and if we hadn't teased him so much, I would have corrected his tone. Yes, now. Bella finally relented and handed him the green bag. We knew he was going to be upset, and hoped that doing this ICLY would save us from an even bigger meltdown. He ripped off the top layer of tissue paper and blanched when he saw the pink. It's pink, he stated with absolutely no excitement in his voice. You're going to have a sister, Nathan, I informed. I wanted a brother, he replied. Nathan, we already explained, baby. We don't get a choice, and the baby is a girl. Bella tried to soothe him, but he just kept shaking his head no. When Bella or I would try to explain all of the perks of having a sister, he shut us right out. We ate our lunches in relative silence, and I began questioning whether this was a good idea or not. Bella was obviously hurt that Nathan was upset, and it was slowly ripping away the joy from finding out. Nathan walked a few steps ahead of us as we walked downtown to the boutique we'd planned on stopping in. The lady who owned the store greeted us with a smile when we walked in and offered her assistance, but I think she could tell we wanted to be left alone. Nathan walked off into his own world in a sea of blue, while Bella and I silently agreed to give him his space. I was busy looking at a wall hanging that said, "Daddy's Little Princess," when I heard a small gasp from Bella. When I looked over, I saw her eyeing a white crib with a crib set that reminded me of a meadow. "Do you like it?" I asked as I walked up behind her. "It reminds me of Forks. The flowers on the blanket are so pretty," she pointed out, and I agreed. I have a magazine at home with a mural I wanted if the baby was a girl, and this would match perfectly. "Bella, if you want it, just say the word, and it's yours." I whispered into her ear, and I felt her shiver. "One day, you're going to get sick of trying to spoil me," Bella joked. But I assured her that was never going to happen. Bella decided that she wanted the crib set along with the nursery furniture. With Nathan, everything we bought was in twos, or I would buy for my place, while she bought for hers. It felt like an outer-worldly experience to shop together, and I was relishing in it. It was hard not to regret the decisions of my past when I could clearly see everything that we missed, but it was also subtle Remy. Ender how special the bond Bella and I shared truly was. "Hey, I'm going to check on Nathan," Bella informed me before walking in the opposite direction. I had turned my attention to some of the clothes, but quickly decided this was not my area of expertise. However, when I looked up, a sign caught my eye. On a whitewashed piece of wood with purple letting it read, "Conceived in love, born in love." I looked over at the set Bella had just picked out, and to my eye, the purples complemented each other. I asked the lady to take it off the wall and put it with our pile because I wasn't leaving the store without it. The sign was the complete truth, and I wanted this baby to know how much she was loved from the first moment she was conceived. When I turned around, I saw Nathan walking towards me with a handful of pink clothes. In his hands he carried few bodysuits that read, "Little Sister," and what looked like pants, hats, and socks to match. "She's going to need clothes, right?" Nathan asked, and I nodded with a smile. "I guess a sister won't be so bad, but I definitely don't want her sleeping in my room. I guess she can play in there as long as she sleeps somewhere else." I laughed. ND was happy that Nathan was starting to digest the news. "Go put that up on the counter while we wait for your mom to be done," I explained, and he did as I asked. I grabbed a few more things I thought would look good in her room and waited patiently as Bella talked to the store owner. I knew they were arranging a date when the furniture would be delivered, so I just tried to stay out of the way. By the time we got back to the house, Bella needed a nap, Nathan was still slightly withdrawn, and I needed to call my siblings. Bella had woken up in the middle of the night completely excited about the wedding that she called and booked it. Now that I had dates and information, I had to call my side with the news, and pray they would all be available. First up was Emmett, who was always the easier to get a hold of. His job kept him in an office I could reach at all hours, so it was no surprise when he answered after the second ring. "Emmett Cullen," he spoke into the phone. "Hey, it's Edward," I replied back. "Hey, man, I was just thinking about you." Rose called and asked if I'd heard anything. She wanted to know if she has to buy pink or blue, he rambled. Did she not get Bella's text? I'll check her phone, but you can let her know it's a girl, I answered, and I heard him laughing in the background. "What's so funny? You are so screwed, man," he hollered, and I rolled my eyes. Have you looked into guns yet? Dude, don't remind me. I've got a few years, but that isn't why I'm calling. What are you doing in October? Around the 29th, I asked. It took him a few minutes to calm down, but he eventually told me nothing was planned. So, I know it's short notice, but how do you feel about the Bahamas? You want me to go to the Bahamas? He asked, clearly confused. Yeah, Bella and I are getting married, and we wanted you to come, I explained. I don't see why not. I'll put in for leave and talk to Rose, but count us in. I wouldn't miss the opportunity to see my little brother get married to the right girl for the first time, he goaded. Yeah, I know, you were right, and I was wrong, I played along. As long as you remember that. Look, man, I gotta go, but I'll call you this weekend and you can give me all the details so I can book flights and a room, he spoke. Already got all of that covered for you. But yeah, we'll talk Saturday? I asked, and he agreed. At first it felt weird having to schedule in phone calls with my siblings, but it was something I slowly got used to. We were all busy in our own lives, and setting aside a specific day to call made us avoid a lot of phone tag games. Alice was up next, and she was, by far, the hardest to get a hold of. Jasper's business had taken off, and with Alice manning their office until she had the baby, I felt like I had to be penciled in most of the time. Though my call went to voicemail, she called right back and we were able to chat for a little while. Pink or blue? Alice asked the second I answered the phone. Did no one get Bella's text? I muttered before telling her it was a girl. Now I don't have to return anything pink, Alice cheered. Alice had been so sure that she was Javi. Being a girl, she had bought out several stores of every pink and purple item they had just to turn around and be told their baby was a boy. Though she was disappointed, she said she'd wait until we found out before she did any returning. I have the cutest little outfit with tons of ruffles. I'll have to tell Bella to pack it for her hospital bag. Alice rambled and cocked my head to the side while sitting at my desk. Had Bella not explained to Alice she was having a home birth? They talked more often than I talked to her, and I had assumed that would come up. I knew Rosalie knew. Why didn't Alice? Alice, Bella is having the baby at home, but I'm sure we can do pictures with the outfit. I offered a compromise when the line went dead silent. Alice, are you still there? You're having the baby where? Alice screamed into the phone. At home. Bella wants to have the baby at home, I answered as I brought the phone back to my ear. Edward, you're a doctor. Isn't that too dangerous? She started firing questions at me left and right, asking about potential dangers and complications, but I just sighed and explained that it was no more dangerous than having the baby in a hospital. Alice's lecture went on, and I got to the point when I was about to hang up when she finally shut up. So, why were you calling again? She asked suddenly. Right, yeah, I wanted to know when you'll no longer be able to fly? I questioned. Around November or so. Why? She inquired. Bella and I booked the Atlantis in October for a destination wedding, and I wanted to make sure you could come, I explained. Of course, this was also the first time I had directly told Alice that we were engaged to begin with, but I was shocked when I had to pull the phone back away from my ear. You're getting married? Alice roared into the phone. When did you get engaged? Edward, put Bella on the phone, now. Fuck, why did I forget to tell my very pregnant and very hormonal sister I was engaged? I'm sorry, Alice, but Bella is asleep, I tried to explain, but she continued to scream. Haven't you been talking to Bella lately? None of this came up? Well, not that I remember. Alice's voice went quiet. Alice? I said into the phone. I didn't like the shift of her voice. It's nothing, I'm sure she said something, it's these damn hormones. I'm sorry, can you email me all of the information? Of course we'll be there. Alice reassured me it would be no problem coming, but I was still worried. I made a mental note to ask Bella about it. Blank. A month after our ultrasound, everything from the boutique in Apex was finally ready to be delivered. Bella hired a team of painters to come in and get the room ready before it was cluttered with furniture. On one wall was a mural of a meadow with lavender and yellow flowers, green grass, and a bright blue sky. The remaining walls were done in a slightly lighter shade of lavender with yellow trim. Bella hung the sign I picked out over the window. We found ABC blocks painted in white for the opposite side, and the wall above the crib would line up the letters of the baby's name, if we could ever agree on one. When we picked out Nathan's name, it was easy. There were no fights or arguments. He was born, he looked like a Nathan, and that was it. With our daughter, Bella was bound and determined to have a name before the birth. However, every name she picked out I hated, and likewise. While Bella favored popular names like Sophia and Lily, I wanted something a little more traditional, like Charlotte or Abigail. To say we sat on opposite sides would be an understatement, but I really didn't want my little girl going to school with 10 other girls with the same name. "Edward, can you come up here?" I heard Bella call out from the baby's room. I found her mapping out wall space with a pencil while trying to balance a level. I tried not to snort, but I failed, and it earned me a nasty glare. "I'm trying to figure out where to put hooks for the name, can you help?" she asked. "I want to get this done before there is a crib in my way." "Of course, but how do you know how many hooks you'll need to hang?" "We haven't exactly solved the name game yet," I reminded her. "Oh, I know, but I figured if I could map it out with a pencil, then it's at least done, and if I need less I can just erase the dot," she explained. So I held the level for her as she made 10 dots on the wall. "You still haven't caved on Lily yet, have you?" she teased, but I shook my head no. "Not unless you've caved on Abigail," I rebutted. But she only huffed. "This isn't working," she said as she gestured her hand in between us. For a second my eyes widened. "I don't mean us, I mean us figuring out a name." "Oh," I breathed a sigh of relief. "Well, you could just cave. Or we could make new lists," she suggested, and I considered the option. "That's not a bad idea," I informed her before we heard the doorbell ring, causing our conversation to be put on hold. The next few hours were spent with Bella ordering the men where to put what and waiting as it all got put together. She immediately busted the crib set out the second the crib was assembled and the mattress was placed in it. Once the movers left, and Bella did a once-over with the vacuum, she let me in to see the final product. Really the room looked like it came out of a magazine, but it also felt warm and inviting at the same time. There were still a lot of drawers to fill and organize, but I loved it. My heart warmed when I saw the rocking chair in the corner. Rocking with Nathan was my favorite thing to do when he was small, and I couldn't wait to do it all over again. When I looked up at the mural and compared it to he now decorated crib and changing table, I noticed the flowers stood out to me more. The room felt cohesive, and it gave me an idea for a name, but I knew Bella wouldn't go for it. "What, you don't like it?" Bella asked when she saw me shake my head slightly. "No, the room is perfect. I just thought of a name, but you'd hate it, so we'll make new lists and try again." I tried to assure her that her decorating skills were amazing. "Tell me the name," she pushed, and after a few minutes I finally blurted it out. "Daphne," I relented. "The room made me think of the name, but I know it's not your style." "Daphne," Bella said slowly like she was practicing it. "Daphne Cullen. Daphne Marie Cullen. That's pretty," I commented knowing Marie was also Bella's middle name. "I guess we have a name," Bella announced as she looked up at me. "You like it?" I asked shocked. "I do, it fits," she agreed with a smile. "Okay, then, you just let me know when you need hooks put into the wall," I offered before giving her a kiss and making my way down to my office to sort through some more paperwork. Blank. "Are you sure we have everything?" Bella asked for the 10th email as I loaded the car with the last few pieces of our luggage. "Yes, sweetheart, we have everything. The passports and tickets are in your purse, Nathan's bag is in the backseat, and both of our carry-ons are packed. Our bags are all here, and you have got to stop worrying." I reassured her that everything was going to be okay. Our flight was leaving in 4 hours, and we needed to hit the road soon if we were going to make it. We were flying into the Bahamas the day before everyone else arrived so we could get checked in, and Bella could meet with the wedding planner. We were staying for a total of a week, and thanks to a teacher holiday, Nathan only had to miss a total of 3 days of school. "I know, Bella tried to explain, but I understood. "It's all going to be just fine," I soothed. And everything was fine until we got onto the plane, and it began to take off. Bella gripped my hand, broke into a sweat, and quietly began cursing herself for the idea of a destination wedding. He was absolutely convinced he was getting a brother from the first second, and she felt like she could breathe again. The flight was long, and traveling was especially hard on Bella because of the baby. But we made do and checked into the Atlantis that night. "Good morning." I kissed Bella's forehead as she groaned. "It's time to get up. What time is your appointment?" 10 a.m., Bella answered as she began to stretch. When we arrived at the hotel, I was shocked speechless to find out Bella had not only booked us in the most expensive area, the Royal Towers, but also upgraded us to the 2-bedroom presidential suite. The money aspect of this didn't faze me, but for Bella to book it surprised me. When I look at her, she shrugged, and I actually felt relief. This was a huge step for her to accept the money we had. I like the room, I mused while Bella yawned. I booked it with you in mind. Are you taking Nathan to dive with the dolphins still? She asked, and I nodded. As part of the package Bella booked, we were given 2 passes to swim with the dolphins, but because of Bella's pregnancy we agreed it wasn't something she was interested in doing. So instead she had the hotel agree to let me take Nathan. I eventually rolled out of bed and opened up the curtain. The sun was shining high in the sky, and the clear blue water down below was a true sight to see. Bella started to get ready for the day as I headed into Nathan's room to wake him up. Dolphins don't bite, do they? Nathan asked with an odd look on his face. They can bite, yes, but they don't unless they're provoked. We just have to do what the trainer tells us, and we'll be fine. No worries, I assured him as we arrived at Dolphin Cay. Donna, our instructor, introduced herself to us and gave us a small lesson on the do's and the don'ts. Since I had Nathan with me, we booked the shallow water interactions because it was the most child-friendly. Donna asked us if we were ready to get started and sent us to the locker to change into our wetsuits. Dad, this fits funny, Nathan complained, but I told him I knew exactly what he meant. However, they were the best suit for us to wear while we were in the water, so we'd have to deal with it. We had an allotted time of 30 minutes given to us, but I may have paid for an extra 30. I just wouldn't be telling that to Bella anytime soon. Watching Nathan in the water was quite an experience. I had to stay with him, but I was still able to get quite a few pictures to share with Bella, including when he dolphin took its fin and splashed water all over Nathan's face. When he asked about the sounds the dolphin was making, the trainer took that as her opportunity to teach Nathan more about the marine life. They chatted for a while before our time was up, with Nathan asking several questions and Donna explaining the answers. Can we do that again sometime? Nathan asked with a huge smile on his face as we exited the locker room. Sure, I told you they weren't scary, I teased. No, but I'm still not ever swimming with a whale. I read in a magazine at school that a trainer was killed by one at SeaWorld, he explained. And I was a bit shocked that was covered. What magazine were you reading? I asked curiously. Time, he answered without missing a bit. He then looked somewhat guilty before amending that he may have taken it from the 6th grade section when he was at the library. We were able to grab lunch before meeting back up with Bella as we waited for the rest of our family to arrive. A little after 3, we heard a knock on the door and were surprised to see everyone there. Bella had booked all of the rooms, so when we checked in, all of the keys were issued to us. We had expected a phone call to go down to the lobby, but instead they were all sent up to us. Come in, I said as I ushered everyone in. The next 10 minutes were led with hellos and hugs since I hadn't seen anyone in several months. Bella had flown to Texas for a weekend about a month ago for Alice's baby shower, but she was only gone for one night. Alice and Bella playfully compared their bellies, with Alice the definite winner, and Bella snatching up Joshua shortly thereafter. Charlie and Karen hung towards the back for a minute before Charlie commented on how beautiful Bella looked. All of the rooms were within the same building, just split up on 2 floors, so we kept Rosalie, Emmett, and Joshua in the second 2-bedroom room booked on our floor, WH. Alice and Jasper and Charlie and Karen took the 1-bedroom suites on the floor below us. We all agreed to meet for dinner that night after everyone had a chance to get settled in and relax for a while. Here, let me help, I offered after I walked into the bathroom to see Bella struggling to put on her necklace. It was a single teardrop diamond that I had bought her shortly after the move. Thank you, she whispered as she stared at me through the glass mirror. You okay? You seem tense, I noted. Just anxious, she answered as she let her back lean against me. I am, too. Did you ask Rosalie and Emmett still wanted to take Nathan tomorrow night? I questioned. She said they would, but I'll double check at dinner, she answered as we both went back to getting ready for dinner. We chose to meet up at Mosaic for dinner because it seemed to have dishes that would appeal to everyone. The place was also casual enough that Nathan and Joshua were welcomed, and no one had to dress up. After we were seated, we all took turns getting up to go from station to station to put our meals together, and it took a while before everyone was back at the table at once. How is Forks? I asked Charlie between bites. Quiet, he answered, and I watched as he eyed Bella as she stood back up to get more with Karen following behind her. Ever since we moved, Bella had taken to calling Karen weekly on updates of Forks, her dad, and anything else they wanted to talk about. It was during one of those phone calls that Bella learned Karen's daughters, Cynthia, had gone away to college and was struck by a drunk driver. She passed away on the scene, and Karen's marriage split up about a year later. She moved to Forks on a whim because she wanted away from a busy city, and meeting Charlie was like a dream come true for her. It was only then that Bella finally stopped stressing over the new woman in Charlie's life. While I have a chance, I have a question. Yeah? I asked quietly to meet his hushed tone. How do you think Bella would handle me asking Karen to marry me? He rushed out, and my eyes widened. I think she'd be okay with it. When do you plan to ask? I questioned. Well, I was actually thinking while we were here. I'm not the most romantic person, but I wanted to talk to Bella first. She seems to have calmed down, but you know her best now, and he trailed off, and I understood his meaning. I'm sure she'll be happy, I assured him, while silently praying I was right. But talk to her before you ask. It'll help her feel included. I got in my last comment BEF. Or the ladies both showed back up at the table, chatting about the nursery and how excited she was to show her when they flew out in March. Bella had extended the invitation to any family that wanted to come out when the baby was born, but asked that they all waited a few weeks. However, she made an exception with Charlie and Karen, who agreed, but wanted to stay in a hotel. No matter how many ways we explained that the house was overwhelmingly big, they didn't care. Nathan was excited to show his papa the fishing spot in the backyard, and we were happy he'd have a distraction while Bella was in labor. So, Edward, Rosalie called from her side of the table. In case no one warned you, we'll be stealing Bella tonight, so you're having a guys' night in with Emmett, Jasper, Charlie, Joshua, and Nathan tonight. My face dropped. I knew the tradition before couples were married was not to see each other, but I hadn't even thought about that until now. Even with Bella down the hall, I didn't want to sleep by myself tonight. I opened and closed my mouth a few times, but couldn't figure out what else to say. Rose, I told you. I needed to talk to him first, and by I meant me. I said maybe, so maybe it still is. Bella eventually piped up as I felt her hand brush over mine. A guy's night sound cool, Nathan piped up, and I figured he wouldn't be on my side. He'd never give up a chance to hang out with his uncle Emmett and Joshua. Bella, you know it's bad luck. Alice attempted to interject, but Bella quickly shut up her. We'll talk about it, she forced, and everyone went quiet for a few seconds before slowly reverting back to the conversations they were having earlier. How is the office coming, Edward? Charlie asked, and I started to explain the progress that had been made. When do you think it'll open? Quote, probably sometime in the summer. I could push for earlier, but I'm going to stay home for about a month to help Bella, and then finish up the last few things. My goal is June 1st, I explained, and he nodded the entire time I spoke. As we all started to leave, Karen pulled me aside and asked to watch Nathan for a while. She and Charlie had taken a small nap while everyone got ready for dinner, so they were wide awake. I think she secretly knew Bella and I needed a few minutes alone, so I agreed. She told us if we needed anything to just call their room, and if they weren't there, they were going to walk down to the water with him. When we got back to the room, stress was flowing off Bella in waves, and I knew Alice's earlier comment had gotten to her. After the year we'd had, bad luck was the last thing both one of us wanted, and even though we celebrated the 1-year mark of finding Nathan quietly with a special dinner as a family, I knew this time of year would still be touchy. I actually wondered if that was why Bella wanted to get married now, replace the awful memories with a date to look forward to. Bella, I called softly, and she slowly turned towards me. We don't have to do anything you don't want to. I know, she muttered with a sigh. I'm being selfish. I should want to spend a night with the girls, but I just don't want to sleep alone? I broached. Yeah, it's hard enough getting to sleep now with you there to lean up against. And I don't know, she mumbled. It's okay. I'll just be down the hall. If you need anything, I'm a phone call away, I offered, and she nodded. I love you, baby. By this time tomorrow you'll be my wife, and there won't ever be a night when we're not together. I wish, Bella chuckled. Just wait until Daphne gets here. We'll be lucky to sleep at the same time, let alone together every night. Shush, I placed a finger on her lips. We were getting married, and I wasn't ready to think about that yet. I'm going to get mine and Nathan's stuff together. 30 minutes later, I walked out of the room as Alice, Rosalie, and Karen waited patiently behind the door. I kissed Bella goodbye, and told her I'd see her the next day. When the door shut, I felt a pang of loss, but I shook my thoughts away and walked down to Emmett's room. Blank, underscore, blank. Charlie, Jasper, and Emmett already had an array of room service ordered with more than enough beer and alcohol to last us through the night. Nathan was busy playing with Joshua, and now that he could walk, he was giving Nathan a run for his money literally. So, a drink? Charlie offered me a glass of scotch. I accepted, but told myself it would be my one and only for the night. God knew the last thing I needed was to be drunk on my wedding day. I already did that once. Thanks, so what's the plan? I asked after I put Nathan and my bags in their second bedroom. Well, Emmett started as he pulled me away from the kids. Karen already offered to come sit with the kids once they fall asleep, and then we figured we'd go downstairs, catch a cab, and hit up a local club. A club? I asked in disbelief. Yeah, it's a special club, and it'll have to do for your bachelor party, he amended, and that was when I realized what he was saying. Hell no, I shouted. I wanted to make sure Nathan wouldn't hear me. But fuck that, I was not leaving this hotel to go to some Bahamas strip joint while my soon-to-be wife will probably toss and turn all night because of our baby. What's the big deal? Rose said I could go. Emmett pushed, and Jasper piped up saying Alice gave the same permission. No, I'll sit right here and order a movie or something, but I am not going to a titty bar. The answer is no, I seethed. What's the big deal? Jasper asked, and my head snapped to him. The big deal is Bella is right down that hall. In fact, I'd have to pass her to get to the elevator, ND she was already iffy about this to begin with. Can you imagine how she'd feel if she knew I was going to a strip joint the night before we said our vows? No way, I respect her more than that, I stated confidently. Well, just so you know, Rosalie and Alice plan on taking Bella to a club, two only of the opposite persuasion, Emmett piped up, and my eyes went wide before I considered his words. She won't go, I rebutted. Bella would never, ever agree to that. You're so sure about that? Jasper asked with a raised eyebrow. Perhaps you should call her and ask? Nope, I know Bella, and my Bella would not do that. There is no reason to bother her, I shot back. You pass, Charlie eventually piped up from behind me. I jumped and turned around to see him smirking. What, you refused to ask for my blessing, so I had to make sure you were worthy enough one way or another. You forced my hand. Seriously? I looked around in disbelief and all of them started laughing at me. Jerks. Oh, if you could see your face, Emmett howled, but I just rolled my eyes and walked away. The rest of the night went by slowly, with each minute ticking away at a snail's pace. When it finally hit midnight, I decided to lie down, feeling confident that Bella wouldn't need to call. Blank, underscore, blank. The next morning dragged by so slowly that by noon I was ready to beat our door down. Of course, Jasper informed me the girls were at the spa getting massages, hair, and makeup, so it wouldn't do me any good, so I threatened to raid the spa. That only led to more jokes at my expense. A little while later, Nathan and I stood side by side as we got ready in the bathroom. I was shaving, and Nathan was brushing his hair. Dad? I turned my head towards him to let him know he had my attention. Nothing is going to change, right? Like after tonight? What do you mean? I asked, not exactly sure what he meant. Well, like when we get home, nothing is going to be different. He clarified, not really, your mom and I will still be your parents, the only difference is your mom's last name will change, and we'll be wearing rings, I answered. Okay, he accepted before he walked off to put his shoes on. Our ceremony was going to be held on the beach, so we decided to go with much more casual dress attire. Bella picked out a long white sundress with green accents, while Then and I wore coordinating green plaid shirts with khaki pants. Unfortunately, I overestimated the time it would take me to get ready, so I had to watch the clock slowly tick by for 30 minutes before Jasper told me it was time. The walk down took about 20 minutes to get to the beach where I met with the minister. He asked me if I was excited, and I honestly couldn't contain the smile on my face. The beach was set up with 2 rows of chairs that kept everyone seated together versus having his and her sides. An archway decorated in white, green, and yellow flowers stood above a small wooden platform where we would say our vows. The sky was clear, the sun was beginning to set, and the waves crashing behind us made for the perfect setting. Bella appeared 30 minutes later on Charlie's arm. Once our eyes locked, I felt all of the air rush out of my lungs. Her hair was pinned up with a white flower to the side. The dress hung loosely around her body, and the breeze made it sway from side to side. Charlie walked her down to where I was standing before giving me her hand. Emmett and Alice stood in as our bridal party, and the short ceremony began. We opted for traditional vows, and 5 minutes later were kissing for the first time as husband and wife. "We're married now," Bella mused as we waited for the photographer to be done taking pictures. "Yes, we are," I whispered back and lowered my lips to her neck. I felt her shake in my arms, and, as I pulled away, our eyes met. Both of us knew exactly where we wanted to be, but the hotel provided a small reception with dinner and a cake. So sneaking off wasn't going to happen. "Are you ready?" she asked, and I nodded as we all trailed off into the room they had set up for dinner. Thankfully Bella kept the meal simple with chicken, rice, and asparagus with several trays of appetizers laid out on the table. They played music and we all danced around and socialized for about an hour before they brought out the cake. It was two-tiered white cake with green flowers. I weighed my options on whether I wanted to shove the cake in Bella's face or not, and when she caught my smirk she kept shaking her head no. "But, baby, it's tradition," I teased as she took a step back from me. "We have never been traditional, Edward Anthony," she rebutted, and I laughed at the use of my middle name. "Oh, but I thought we could start right about now," I joked as I took my piece of cake and gently put it to her lips. She cautiously opened her mouth and let me slide the piece right in. As she ate the piece of cake she just shook her head at me before smacking the entire piece of cake she held in my face. I mocked anger as I took a napkin and started to wipe the smeared frosting off my face. "I love you," Bella said cautiously. "Not nearly as much I love you, Mrs. Cullen," I whispered into her ear. We excused ourselves 15 minutes later, but not before making sure Nathan was okay with staying with Emmett and Rosalie again. Of course, he couldn't have cared less, so Bella and I made our way to our room. "You look gorgeous. I'm not sure I've had time to tell you that or not," I commented as we rode the elevator up. "Thank you," she replied. "Thank you for all of this. Today was perfect." "Oh, sweetheart, if anything I should be thanking you for saying, I do." I kissed her forehead. "It wasn't so hard," she teased. Once we got back into our room, Bella took off for the bathroom, which left me waiting to figure out how the rest of our night would go. I didn't want to assume too much, but it was also our wedding night so I wanted to have sex. Frankly, I wanted to have sex with Bella every night of the week, but with our schedule and her expanding stomach, our typical every other day had turned into once or twice a week. I knew as time went on that would dwindle down even further, so I was happily taking advantage of every time Bella offered. Once glanced down at my ring, and I couldn't stop the smile from appearing on my face. Bella was my wife. She actually said yes to me. I still would never know how I got so lucky, but my thoughts stopped as soon as Bella opened the bathroom door. She stood in the doorway with her hair down, flowing over her shoulders, in a white baby doll nightgown and matching white panties. The top tied in a bow just between her breasts, and the panties were completely mesh. My eyes widened, before I stood up and walked over towards her. "You look," I was speechless. "Thank you," she whispered back, and I could see a slight tremble in her shoulders. Was she nervous? "God, Bella, seeing you in lingerie makes me wild, but, damn, seeing you in this, there are no words to describe what I'm feeling right now," I expressed lovingly without showing her exactly how caveman I felt. All I wanted to do was throw her in bed and trace very section of her skin to mark her as mine, but I knew I couldn't. Instead, I took her hand and guided her to the bed. We laid down and kissed passionately while our hands moved over each other's bodies. When my fingers trailed over the sheer fabric of her panties, I noticed something was missing: hair. I looked up in surprise. "Do you like it?" they suggested I wax, and I'd never done that before, so I tried it. "And if you don't like it, I don't have to do it again," Bella rambled, and I knew by that point she was nervous. Bella never went on tangents like that unless she was uncomfortable. Instead of trying to explain with my words, I slipped her panties off and showed her with my mouth. My tongue traced her smooth skin, and all I heard were gasps and moans. Our night progressed slowly until we made love for the first time as husband and wife. We then switched to cuddling, and back to sex, and back and forth, until well into the morning. All the while knowing we'd be able to sleep in the next day. Sadly, our time at the Atlantis came and went by too quickly, and we said our tearful goodbyes to our family and set off towards different terminals at the airport. Charlie did eventually squeeze in a moment with Bella, who gave her full permission, so on our final dinner together we were able to toast to the newly engaged Charlie and Karen. They joked that they'd just see a justice of the peace, but Bella forcefully made sure they knew she wanted to at least be present. The plane ride home went smoothly, and after a few days, we all adjusted back into our normal routine. Nathan was back in school, Bella was writing, and I was taking care of my office. Before we knew it, Thanksgiving came and went, as did Christmas. We flew to Texas for Christmas to meet my newest nephew, and we all stayed just long enough to ring in the new year together. Of course, nothing good could come for all of the Cullen children together. And when Alice's doorbell rang at 10 p.m. we should have known better than to answer it. "Jasper, was that the doorbell?" Emmett asked curiously. We were all busy watching the New Year's special on the TV. Alice was in a back bedroom tending to her baby, and Nathan had passed out an hour earlier in their spare bedroom. For it being New Year's, the party was very low-key and quiet. "I think so, I'll be right back," he mumbled and walked off to answer it. A minute went by before I heard shouting. Emmett and I looked at each other before bolting to the room with Bella and Rosalie trailing behind us. "I came to see my grandchild," my mother screeched as I came to a dead halt. "I don't give a damn if you came to see Jesus. You are not stepping foot in my house." Jasper seethed so low even I had to take a double take. "Ah, my boys are here, to come see your mommy," she slurred, and that was when I realized Esme was drunk. I immediately turned around and pleaded with Bella, who had remained out of view, to go back to the living room, but she refused. Her feet were rooted into place, and she wasn't moving. Rosalie took off in hopes of catching Alice before she realized anything was wrong. Of course, Rose missed her by mere seconds, and Alice being Alice flipped out. "What the fuck are you doing here? You're not welcomed here," Alice screamed, but all Esme did was laugh. She continued to try and push through Jasper to get in, and eventually he disappeared, so Emmett took over holding her at the door. "Edward, I spy with my little eye a ring," she taunted as she pointed out my wedding band. "Now, where oh where? Is that gold-digging whore? She's not worth it, Edward," Emmett called, but it didn't matter. I was at his side in seconds, with Alice trying to come between us in the middle. Alice was still reeling, but Bella stayed out of view until Esme looked in and spotted her. "Oh, look here, Carlisle was right, another gold-digger baby is on the way. You should be so proud." She spoke with so much masslice behind her voice I could feel the hatred. Without thinking, I raised my hand to push her back, but stopped when I heard a gun being cocked behind me. Emmett, Alice, and I turned around together to see Jasper aiming a shooting rifle at Esme's head. She started to laugh, but all three of us backed away quickly. I practically leapt to Bella, and began pulling her away. "What are you going to shoot me?" Esme gasped between fits of laughter. "Ma'am, you're in Texas. The only thing I can't do is shoot you in the back, so why don't you try stepping right in again, and we'll see who wins." Jasper taunted, and that was how my mother died, or at least that is what I wish had happened. In truth, Esme didn't attempt to step foot in the house, but a neighbor did call the cops. She was arrested for trespassing, public intoxication, among a few others, including striking the officer who tried to cuff her. It was then decided that each of us were filing restraining orders. None of us knew why we hadn't done it before, but the second Emmett and I got home, they were filed and approved. Blank, underscore, blank. Once the new year passed by, time seemed to speed back up again. And now we were awaiting the birth of Daphne. Bella had organized, rearranged, and reorganized the baby's room too many times to count, but with only 2 weeks left to go. I kept telling her she needed to focus on resting and not refolding the same outfit 20 times. In the last month, Bella and I had spent every single weekend taking Nathan out and visiting different places. During the week, he was busy with school and visiting with friends, but on the weekend we made use of Jordan Lake a lot, and even took an overnight trip down to Myrtle Beach. We knew our Tim, he as a family of 3 was coming to an end soon, and we wanted to get in as much time with Nathan before our lives were turned upside down. Bella had asked Karen to fly in sooner than we had originally expected because of a feeling. Charlie was going to fly out as soon as he got word that Bella had gone into labor or at 40 weeks, whichever came first, while Karen would be coming in the next day. In the morning, Bella's midwife Rhonda was scheduled to come over for a checkup. Bella's pregnancy had been progressing beautifully and with absolutely no complications. I knew she was nervous about something going wrong, but I had full confidence in Bella's ability to birth Daphne. We had a hospital on standby if the need arose, but I prayed it never came to that. Alice had taken to calling very few days to lecture me on how dangerous this was going to be, and how amazing her hospital birth was. I frankly didn't care as long as Bella was comfortable, and I wasn't surprised when Bella stowed PPED answering the phone when Alice called. Both of my siblings were set to visit in late April over Easter, and I figured they'd patch things up then. The night before Karen arrived, Bella woke up with contractions. She continued to tell me not to worry, and that she was going to get some water so they'd settle down. I lay in bed waiting for her to come back from the kitchen, and when she didn't 30 minutes later, I rolled out of bed to check on her. Instead, I found her on her hands and knees rocking back and forth on the living room, counting. I rushed to her side, but she was too busy counting to acknowledge me, so instead I sat there. When she finally started to breathe normally again, she looked up, and I could see it in her eyes that it was time. I made a quick call to a car service to have Karen picked up at the airport at 7 and put in another call to our midwife. At 7:30, I left for a brief minute to bring Nathan to his bus stop, but only after Rhonda walked in. As we walked down the street, Nathan asked me if the baby was coming. "Yes, she is," I answered. "Will she be here before I come home?" he asked, and I shrugged. "I don't know. Sometimes babies come very quickly, while other times it can take days. We'll have to see what your sister has in store, but don't worry too much. Your mom will be just fine, and so will your sister. Try to stay focused in class, okay?" I asked, and he nodded. The bus showed up a minute later, and as soon as it was out of sight, I started to run home. I opened the door in time to hear Bella scream. The sound broke my soul in two as I watched her body shake as another contraction overtook her. "I'm going to start preparing," Rhonda whispered to me. When I knelt down next to her, I could see lit beads of sweat had met on her forehead and her face was flushed. "Are you thirsty?" I asked, offering anything I could to help her. She nodded her head, so I rushed into the kitchen to refill her jug of water. When I got back to her, she expressed wanting to be on the balcony. I helped her up and held her tightly as we slowly made it up the stairs. When a contraction hit her mid-step, I held her in my arms and steadied her until she could walk again. "I've got you," I whispered into her ear as she gripped the banister with one hand and mine with the other. She started to breathe heavier, and I could hear what sounded like counts but were too low to distinguish. "You're doing great, sweetheart," I continued to soothe until we were in our room. "I want to go to the balcony," she managed to say between contractions. And as we stepped out into the cool brisk morning air I heard Bella sigh. Her skin was completely flushed, and though walking seemed to ease the pain slightly, it was still difficult for her to stand unsupported once a major contraction hit. 8 eventually became 9, and I spotted the car with Karen pulling up. She immediately rushed into the house and asked what she could do. Bella didn't want anyone else in the room, and Karen knew that, so she told me she would start working on food and some cleaning. I thanked her profusely before rushing back up the stairs to Bella. When I opened the door, I found Bella rocking back on her hands and knees again. I sat down next to her and rubbed circled into her lower back. It seemed to only ease the pain slightly, but if it helped, I'd do it for hours. When the clock neared 9:30 and Bella's contractions started to come every minute, we knew she was nearing the point of transition, and it would soon be time to push. Rhonda asked Bella if she wanted to be checked, but she said no. Rhonda didn't push, and sat off to the side while letting me take the role of supporting Bella. A rubber sheet had been placed over our mattresses and then a soft throwaway blanket on top so Bella wouldn't feel rubber on her skin. The lights were dim, and once the sun rose I pulled the curtains almost completely shut. I adjusted the AC down into the 60s, but Bella still ripped off her nightgown a few minutes later and began laboring completely naked. At 10 o'clock, Bella's eyes widened as she explained she felt like she needed to push. IBR aced her as she pushed, standing up for several minutes, allowing gravity to take its natural course and help Daphne lock into position. "I need to lie down," Bella informed us, and I helped Bella move to the center of our bed. Rhonda asked me to sit behind Bella and brace both of her hands. "Bella, now when the next contraction hits, I need you to push," Rhonda coached, and Bella nodded. Bella held her breath and pushed through contraction after contraction, but Daphne seemed to be stuck at her pelvic bone. Rhonda continued to monitor her heartbeat throughout and never saw a sign of distress. "You're doing so well, Bella. It'll be over soon," I soothed into her ear, but I could see how tired she was. "I can't do this," she whispered with tears in her eyes, but I kept telling her she could. "Bella, just like that." Rhonda pushed. "Exactly, Bella, push just like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. I could feel the force Bella was using, and after an hour of pushing, Daphne Marie Cullen was born. She was immediately placed on Bella's chest so we could see her. Once her cord stopped pulsing, Rhonda handed me a pair of scissors to cut it, and I moved out from behind Bella, leaving several pillows to keep her propped up. Bella immediately began to nurse Daphne as Rhonda worked to birth the placenta. All that was left was the cleanup, which took quite a bit of effort and time. Bella and Daphne lay together for about an hour before she passed her off to me. After doing the once-over, I knew she was perfect, and with a small yawn, she was asleep in my arms. "Would you like a shower?" I asked Bella, who simply nodded. I could tell by her eyes that she was feeling a baby high, which meant she was pretty awake, and I told her I'd give Daphne a quick bath and get her dressed. Bella just nodded and trailed off to the bathroom. Shortly thereafter, Karen knocked on the door and offered to help Rhonda clean up. Having her there was a godsend because as soon as the bed was put back together, Karen brought in several trays of food, ranging from fresh fruits to grilled sandwiches, with water, juice, and tea. She explained that she remembered being so hungry after she had her daughter that she wanted to eat an entire town. So she made a little bit of everything. She then asked if she was on the list to pick Nathan up from school, and I let her know that she had been added, so she planned on doing that when he got out. Once I got Daphne cleaned up and dressed, it only took a few seconds of rocking to get her to drift off back to sleep. I placed her in the bassinet by our bed and walked into the bathroom to make sure Bella was okay. She was sitting on the ledge just letting the water run over her body, and after a few minutes, she let me help her out. She put on a pair of cotton pajamas before getting back into bed. I then pointed out the food Karen had made and her face lit up. Bella snacked on fruits for a little while and began texting everyone to let them know Daphne arrived. "Edward, what were her stats?" I never asked. Bella looked up at me. 9 pounds, 13 ounces, and 21 inches long, I answered, and her eyes widened. "She's big and healthy, just like Nate was." "Where is Nathan?" she immediately asked. "Karen is picking him up from school, and then I imagine he'll descend on us," I explained, and she nodded. Daphne woke up every few hours to eat, but for the most part stayed content in either Bella's or my arms. When Nathan came home from school, he barreled in to see his new sister, and decided he would wear his new big brother shirt to school the next day. "You're so small," Nathan cooed at her. "When you get big, I'm going to teach you how to play baseball. Oh, and make sure you're always nice to Dad. He'll give you anything you want if you just pout. I have so much to teach you." For a second, Daphne opened her eyes, and Nathan was then convinced she liked him best. "She's perfect," I whispered into Bella's ear as we watched on as Nathan continued to talking to Daphne. "Thank you," Bella whispered back. "I couldn't have done this without you." "You're welcome, but you're a bit backwards." "Thank you for going through it all again," I replied. "I love you. We really do have it all, huh?" Bella smiled, and I nodded. Nathan looked back up at us, and then whispered something into Daphne's ear. "Secrets already, Nathan?" I teased, and he smirked. "I was just telling Daphne that we need to convince you to give us a brother," Nathan answered, and I heard Bella huff. "We'll see, Nathan," I warned, and he shrugged. That night, Aaron cooked a delicious turkey dinner that we all ate in our bedroom. Bella eventually flipped the TV on, and that was how we spent the remainder of the day until Bella's high wore off. She nursed Daphne a little after 8, and they both drifted off to sleep after that. I assisted Nathan while he worked on his sheet of homework he brought home, and then tucked him get into bed. Karen tried explaining that she'd rented a hotel room, but I put my foot down and moved her stuff to one of the spare rooms. She said thank you and sealed herself away. Charlie would be flying in the next day, and they'd be staying for a week. That night I curled up into bed around 10 only to be woke up by Daphne's cries an hour later. As groggy and tired as I felt, the only thing I could think was I wouldn't want it any other way. I glanced down at my ringing phone and saw it was Nathan. He rarely called me during the week, so I clicked the button on my Bluetooth to answer. "Hey, Dad, where are you?" Nathan immediately asked the second I said hello. I was just heading home. What's wrong? I asked back, fearing something had happened. Good, so you're still in the city? He questioned. Yes. Is something wrong? I repeated. No, nothing is wrong. Can you meet me for coffee? I need to talk to you, he answered. And instead of taking my usual turn to head home, I turned the opposite and headed for his campus. Sure, Nathan, what is this about? I pushed. I met her, he said forcefully. Who? I asked back. Her. I met her, he answered like I'd asked the dumbest question in the world. I continued to think about his words, and that is when it hit me: he met a girl. A girl important enough to call me in the middle of the week and want to meet about. I knew it was wrong, but I prayed to God she wasn't pregnant. I'm on my way, I stated before asking if we'd meet at the typical Starbucks. He said yes, and I hung up to let Bella know I'd be late. Hey, sweetheart, Nathan called and wanted to meet up, so I'm going to be late. I explained to her voicemail. On Tuesday nights, the girls had cheerleading, so she was normally busy driving them to and from practice. 20 minutes later, I was RKED and walking in to find my son positively bouncing. So, does she have a name? I asked after I sat down with my drink. Rachel, he said wistfully, and I smirked. How did you meet? I then asked, trying to get a little background. We have a class together. She was rushing to her next class, which is on the other side of the campus, and she tripped. I helped her up, and I just Dad, how did you know? With Mom. He changed directions quickly. Your mom and I had a different start, but I realized it when I couldn't see my life without her in it, I answered cryptically. Nathan knew our background, and was old enough to remember the time when Bella and I weren't together, but it was almost never spoken about. In fact, I wasn't even sure Daphne had put it all together yet, or if she had, she never asked. Anyway, I helped her pick up her stuff, and I asked her for her number. We've gone out a few times, and it's just she's perfect. He laughed almost to himself like he was remembering a funny story. Nathan had dated a little bit in high school, but, for the most part, he focused on school and sports. A few girls had stuck around for longer than a month, but it was rare, and no one I'd consider to be a serious girlfriend. He'd been in college for 2 years now, and I knew this time would come. Bella was going to be in tears that our little boy was finally growing up, but I was happy for him. So, she's not pregnant. Then, I joked, and he looked at me like a deer in headlights. What? No. How could you? Oh, well, I guess my message was vague, but no, I haven't. He stopped D in his tracks as I leaned my head to the side to look at him. Was he saying what I thought he was saying? Let's just leave it with this. You and Mom made good examples for waiting. Oh, I said, shocked. In high school, Bella and I were strict when girls came to our house, and there was never a time where he'd be alone in his room with one. We both made sure that he knew all of the basics, along with a full knowledge of condoms and how to use them. It was embarrassing but needed. He never asked any additional questions, but I assumed once he started living in the dorms he would have. Well, I guess I just wasn't expecting that answer. Good, that's great, actually. So, how long have you been seeing her? A few weeks, he answered, and I nodded. I already know what you're going to say. I'm too young. We haven't known each other long enough, but I swear, this is just, he trailed on, looking for the right word. Different? I offered, and he nodded. Exactly. Something about her is just different, he explained. Well, I wasn't going to tell you any of the above, but I was going to tell you to take your time. You both have time, and if you feel so strongly about her, I'd love to meet her. I acknowledged that I not only understood his position, but I also accepted it too. About that, and that's why I called. I wanted to bring her to dinner on Easter, but I don't know Mom will react, he said nervously. Oh, your mom will be excited. She's going to be sad, because it's just another reminder that you're getting older. But I'll make sure she's prepared, I promised. I stayed for another 20 minutes, and we talked about Nathan's classes, life, and how everything was going. He was in his 3rd year at the North Carolina State for marine biology. That night I went home to Bella and explained the new information I had just learned. He wants to bring a girl home for Easter? Bella asked sadly. Yes, that is what he wanted to talk about. He wanted to know how I knew, I replied. Knew what? She asked curiously. That you were the one, I explained, and she gasped. Hold on. First, you tell me my little boy wants to bring a girl home from college, and now you're saying he thinks she could be the one? She started to tear up, and I only nodded my head. I'm not ready for this. He's only 21. I thought I had more time than this. Bella, come here, I patted the chair I was sitting in. She walked over and laid down on my lap. We knew this day would come, and this is a good thing. We've always just wanted Nathan to be happy, and I just want us to keep an open mind when we meet her. Quote, "Oh, like I'd be mean. Lord knows the welcome I got," she scoffed. "Well, yes, you do have that to compare," I acknowledged. "I'll be nice. I just can't believe he's all grown up," she whispered. And I brought my lips to hers to comfort her. "You know, Mr. Cullen, if I didn't know any better, I'd say you were trying to seduce me to get my mind off of Nathan growing up," she accused with a playful smirk on her face. "Are you objecting?" I asked mischievously, but she shook her head no. The next month, Rachel drove in from Raleigh to spend Easter Day with our family. She was a little quiet at first, but she quickly opened up and fit right in with our bunch. We had our annual family Easter egg hunt, followed by baskets and gifts, and then a big brunch. We learned she was in school to become a biology teacher, and that was why she shared a class with Nathan. Her family was from Cary, which wasn't too far away from Apex, but were visiting her brother that lived out of state for Easter. Watching Nathan interact with Rachel was surreal. She moved, he moved, and vice versa. I could see what he meant when he called her perfect. "They seems happy," Belle commented after Nathan and Rachel left. "I agree, she's a sweet girl," I agreed. "They're still young though," she pointed out, and I agreed. "I still hope she sticks around." "I do, too. I just and him to be happy. That's all I've ever wanted for all of our children," I replied absent-mindedly. "Me too," she sighed before we retired to our room for the night. Nathan was offered a job right out of college, and they started him out at a decent salary, and that was when he and Rachel decided to rent a small house just outside of the city. Rachel began working in one of the local high schools, and for a while they were content to just start out together. 6 months after they moved in, Nathan came over to talk to both of us about Bella's old ring. On our 5-year anniversary we went out and celebrated with new rings, but put ours away in case any of our children wanted them. "Is something wrong, baby?" Bella asked after we all sat down in the study. "No, nothing is wrong. I just want to ask you a question about your old ring, Mom," he directed his question at Bella. I felt her tense next to me, before she breathed out and nodded her head for him to continue. "I know you put it away, and I didn't know if it was being saved for any one of us in particular. But, I was going to see, if you didn't mind, I'd like it to, use," he stumbled through his words. "You're proposing?" I interjected, and he nodded. "Yeah, he trailed off and just smiled. Bella stood up wordlessly and left the room. Nathan looked confused and then worried for a minute before she came back with a black box in her hand. "You'll call us the second she says yes, you hear?" she tells him with tears in her eyes. "Of course," he returns before standing up to hug her. "Thank you." "When?" I asked, and he shook his head. "Soon. I just don't know when," he answered, and I nodded. I remembered that position. "I better get home," Nathan stated as he glanced at his watch. "Thank you." Nathan called CTLY 1 week later to let us know she said yes. The next month we hosted a small engagement party in the backyard. Through the help of Margaret, Rachel's mother, and Bella, their wedding was planned exactly 6 months after their engagement was announced. They both agreed they wanted a small church wedding with just their closest friends and family. On Nathan's wedding day, Emmett, Nathan, and I.S. ed up in the room attached to the main groom's room. It was obvious he was a bundle of nerves, and every 2 seconds tried to fix the position of his bow, the laces of his shoes, or the buttons on his jacket. "So, you're nervous?" Emmett pipped up. Yeah," Nathan deadpanned, but the look on his face was priceless. "Nathan, just breathe. It's all going to be just fine. As soon as you see her, you'll be fine," I tried to soothe. But he wasn't having it. "Yeah, I agree. Just relax. Nothing will really change. You already live together, so now it'll just be more official," Emmett tried to help, but instead caused Nathan to panic more. I think things will be a little different," Nathan muttered before he looked down nervously. "Hold on," Emmett said as he evaluated the situation. "You live together, Nathan. You're not saying you've—" Emmett trailed off. Wow. No wonder you're nervous." "Look, I'm not saying I haven't done." He looked over towards me before shaking his head. "Things, but we've never done that. Up until this point I had tried to stay out of it, but I figured this was my clue to interject. Emmett, I'm pretty sure Nate is just nervous, just like you were with Rose, and I was with Bella." I tried to brush off, but Emmett rolled his eyes. I know, but at least we had. Do you need advice? He offered, and though I could tell Emmett was sincere, Nathan screamed no before walking off. I looked at Emmett and shook my head before walking into the other room just to be told it was time. When I walked into the sanctuary, I found Bella and took my seat. Nathan stood proudly at the front at the altar, and all of the nerves washed away from his face as soon as Rachel began walking down the aisle with her father, Robert. Though they opted for a traditional ceremony, it was only about 30 minutes long. Everyone gathered for pictures before heading over to the country club for their reception. For Bella and I, nothing really changed after Nathan's wedding. We had already considered Rachel like another daughter, and once or twice a month they would come over for breakfast on Sunday morning so we could catch up. They had only been married for a few months before they announced they were expecting their first child. I probably shouldn't have been shocked, but I was. For some reason, I saw them waiting longer, but I was still happy, nonetheless, and it was how I found myself 7 months later taking my son to lunch while Bella and Margaret threw Rachel a baby shower at our house. "Are you ready to order?" the waitress asked shortly after Nathan and I were seated at La Rancherita. I smirked because she knew exactly what we wanted, but each time she asked just the same. After taking our order, and Nathan still wasn't talking, I decided I'd engage him. 26 years ago I sat in the same position he was in now. I had the same fears, hopes, and dreams, though he was in a much stabler position. "You're nervous?" I stated, and he nodded. Until this point he hadn't come to me to talk, but as time went on, and the day loomed closer, I knew he'd eventually break. "How did you do it?" Nathan asked finally, and I sighed. "We worked together," I began. "Your mom and I were in a different situation, but it didn't change how we functioned. We came together as your parents and we talked, we listened, and we opened up our hearts to you. I was scared to death I'd ruin you, or drop you. But the second you were born, that was it. I was your dad, and there was no going back, and never did a day pass that I wanted to go back, either." "You were scared, too?" he asked dumbfounded, and I couldn't hold back a laugh. A fumbling, nervous wreck. I was so sure I wouldn't know what to do, how to hold you, wouldn't know what you wanted when you cried. Man, I was a wreck. But it got better. Your mom went into labor, and then you were there, and it clicked, I explained while I watched Nathan take mental notes. "So, you just knew?" he pushed on with his list of questions, and I mildly shrugged. "I knew the basics, and it didn't take long to learn your cues and personality. Your mom still had to show me how to properly put on a diaper, but I picked it up quickly, just like you will." I reassured him. I thought asking her to marry me was nerve-wracking, but this every night I wonder if I'll be a decent father, or if I'll pass out while she's in labor. "Do you know how embarrassed I'd be if I did that? I'd never be able to face my wife again," he joked, and I joined in with a chuckle. "Nathan, I've been there 4 times now. The first time was the hardest because neither one of us knew what to expect. You and Rachel have talked about it all, right? What she wants, and how you'll help her?" I asked, and he nodded. "Yeah, I mean, she has her birth plan and all that. She's already told me if they want to do something she doesn't want, then I'm to say something. But what if I'm not enough? I mean, she doesn't want drugs, and I wasn't home for Daphne. But I was for Daniel." I remember those screams. He paled slightly as he spoke. 2 years after Daphne was born, Bella and I found out we were expecting another child. Though Daniel wasn't planned, he was very much wanted, and Nathan was thrilled to be getting his brother. The day Bella went into labor, our Nathan was out of school. A friend of his was coming to pick him for a while, but Daniel came too fast. Bella had never been more vocal than when she had Daniel, and when he was born at 10 pounds and 6 ounces we knew why. That night as Nathan and Daphne oohed and awed over Daniel, Bella told me in so many words that I would never be touching her again, and we were done having children. I took the news stoically and didn't argue, but sure enough, a year later, we welcomed Natalie into the world. After that, I made an appointment to ensure we were done at 4. "Yes, well, you also need to remember how big your brother was when he was born. I'm sure your child will be much nicer to Rachel than mine were," I excused. And he rolled his eyes. "That is true, but still, how did you do it? Sit by and know you couldn't do anything?" he asked, but I shook my head. I may not have been able to talk over the pain, but I still did things, and you can't go into it thinking there is nothing you can do. If her water is empty, you fill it. If she needs you to rub her back, you do it. If she needs help standing, then you brace her. Nathan, there is plenty for you to do. And though I'd never say I had a harder job than your mom, she'll be the first one to tell you I made it easier on her. All you need to focus on is making sure Rachel only has to focus on birthing the baby. Everything else falls on you, I pointed out, and he nodded. That makes sense. How long do you think the shower will last? He wondered as we finished eating our food. I'd say we still have another hour or two before we head back. Knowing your mom, she'll be in tears half of the shower, anyway, I laughed, and he agreed. As nervous as I am. I can't wait to meet her, Nathan confessed, and I knew that was coming. See, I nodded my head at him. Nate, you will be a good dad because you want to be. You care enough to worry. And worrying is normal. She's lucky to have you and Rachel. I'm still so thankful you married someone as wonderful as her. Quote, I know, right, she's perfect, but I also had good examples, he complimented. And I smiled. Well, your mom makes it easy on me. She's definitely my other half, I agreed. Do you ever think about, he trailed off, and I shook my head no. No, I really don't. I used to, but it was because I was worried she wasn't really gone. It was like we got off too easy. But now, I've got other things to worry about like your sister going to prom, I groaned, and Nathan laughed at me. Just you wait, you're having a daughter, your day will come. As soon as the words left my mouth he stopped laughing. Not cool, he deadpanned. A silence hung over us for a few minutes before I uncomfortably asked him if he still thought about his time away. Not really, I have recently, though. I mean, you and Mom said I could always revert with the wrong stresses, he trailed off. You're worried the baby could make you switch? I asked simply, and he nodded. You haven't had an episode in 17 years, and though babies can be stressful, I'm confident you'll be able to handle it, I assured him. Thank you, he nodded his head, and we moved to leave. I do have a question though, and it's something I've been meaning to ask for a while. Nathan looked nervous, but I just nodded my head for him to continue. When you and Mom first met, why didn't it work? He asked, and I sighed. I had expected this question years ago, before he even married Rachel, but it never came. Nathan, let me ask this. How do you think your mother and I raised you? I redirected because his answer would help me in explaining things he never knew, secrets we had hidden from the start. I don't know. You were both loving, supportive, and you taught me to be kind and accepting. He rambled on for a second. Well, that wasn't how I was raised. Your mom was raised like that, and she has been pure and kind from the beginning. However, my mother raised me to do anything she asked regardless of the consequences. It wasn't until you were taken that I was able to see how horribly unhappy I had been all along. With your mom, things would have worked had I fought harder. I just didn't. I bent to Esme's will, and instead, put my wants on hold. I tried for a while after we broke up to fix things. But your mom knew better. She knew as long as Esme was in the background we wouldn't have ever been happy. It took me 8 years to see it, but once I did, that was it. Your M should have been my all from the start, but I was blinded by manipulation, I explained. How did she fit in? Nathan pushed without mentioning the name. Esme liked her, and I thought that was what was expected. I was told that I'd go to college, be a doctor, find a wife, and have children in that order. At the time, it seemed like the next logical step. I admitted, slightly embarrassed that I was having to be so frank with my own son. So, you regretted me? I fit out of order, Nathan asked quietly, and my eyes widened. Not for a second. You were, and still are, one of priorities in life. From the moment you came into my life that fate was sealed. I was just lucky enough to have found someone as wonderful as your mom along the way. Without Bella, Lord only knows how you would have been raised, I snapped. Do you regret your time apart? He questioned. I try not to, because when I do it's depressing. At first, it was hard to look past, but more so, hard to understand why your mom gave me another chance. One night, she sat me down and explained to me that she didn't see me as the boy she'd first met in college. She saw someone who had matured and grown into their own person, and that was why she was willing to try. After that, it got better in time, and now I just focus on you, your siblings, and your mom. I make sure I am doing everything in my power to ensure you're all happy and cared for, I answered. Is that why you told me to never allow anyone to come before Rachel? To fight for her even if I had to stand against you or Mom? He wondered after a second. Exactly, I nodded. Once you got married, though you'll always be our son, you also became Rachel's husband. It's your duty to ensure she is always taken care of, and to always fight for her. Once your daughter is born, you'll still be our son, but you'll also be Rachel's husband, and your daughter's father. That sounds intimidating, he admitted honestly. It can be, but you're a smart man with a strong head on your shoulders. You've been through things I can't imagine, and you've matured well beyond your years, I complimented. How did you and Mom deal? When I was gone, how did you not give up? He questioned. Your mom, I stated simply. That's the simplest answer I have. From the second Garrett's confession came out, I didn't know what I think. Logically, as a doctor I put the pieces together. But your mother wouldn't accept that. She sat on my living room floor for days telling us you were still alive, and that we could never give up, because she knew. And I've never been more thankful that she was right. Nathan nodded, and I knew he was processing a lot of what we just talked about. We quietly walked out of the restaurant without saying another word. We still have some time. Why don't we pick something up for your daughter? I asked as I nodded over to the same boutique Bella and I used to buy for Daphne, Daniel, and Natalie. Yeah, Rachel would like that, he commented absent-mindedly as we headed over. Once inside, we said hello to the Cindy, the owner, who knew me by name. Nathan walked through the aisle and settled up a pink outfit that said, Daddy's Lil Angel. I looked down to see my phone ringing and noticed it was Bella. I walked outside as Nathan paid. Edward, are you still with Nathan? Bella rushed the second I picked up. Yes, I answered. Good, you need to get him to the hospital. Rachel's water broke, and we're on our way. She continued to rush out while a sea of commotion could be heard in the background. Okay, I stated as the reality of the situation hit me. Okay, I'll get him there. Nathan was walking out as I spun around. Come on, it's time for you to be a dad, I announced, and Nathan froze. What? No, we have a few more weeks, he tried to stall. But I shook my head no. Well, your mother has your wife whose water has broken, so I'm under strict instructions to get you to the hospital, now. Babies wait for no one, I reiterated. And Nathan took off for the car. Traffic was light, and after only hitting one light, I pulled into the parking lot. Nathan continued to mutter to himself about it being too early, and that he couldn't do this. But I just told him that the baby would be fine, and that he could. When we got to the OB ward, I waited in the family area with Robert. Rachel asked both her mother and Bella if they'd be in the room with her. Bella tearfully agreed, and Rachel explained that even though she didn't feel comfortable birthing at home, she wanted to go as naturally as possible. I knew it could be. Hours before my granddaughter was born, and I placed a call to Daphne asking her to watch Daniel and Natalie for the night because I needed to stay. Even though I wasn't expected in the room, Nathan still requested I look over the baby after she was born. Despite having my own practice, I did still have doctor's rights at the hospital, because we used it for emergency situations. Time ticked by slowly, and every so often Bella would come out to update me. Rachel progressed naturally, and after 9 hours, she and Nathan welcomed into the world Sydney Michelle Cullen. Once Rachel was covered back up, Bella came out to get me. Robert, Rachel's dad, had gone home a few hours earlier. When I walked in, Rachel was holding Sydney as Nathan beamed down at both of them. I'm not ready to hand her over yet, Rachel said quietly to me as soon as I walked in the door. Take your time, I'm here when you're ready, I reassured her, and she nodded. After about an hour, Rachel handed Sydney over while I did a quick checkover. All was well and perfect, and Nathan helped his wife into the shower while he helped me give her a quick clean up. I told you, you could do it, I commended him. I know, he said as he gazed down at his daughter. She's perfect. Yes, she is, I agreed. Bella and I left shortly after Rachel was moved to her recovery room and told them to call if they needed anything, otherwise we'd be back the next day. That night, while I held Bella in my arms, I couldn't help but feel accomplished. We had done good with Nathan, and now it was his turn. You know what's scary? Bella yawned. I sighed as I kissed her head. Daphne is next, Bella chuckled, and I paled. I'm locking her in the basement. It was Bella's turn to laugh at me before we drifted off to sleep. My last thought before I drifted off was on what kind of shotgun to buy next. The end.